Hey guys, if you want to skip right to the interview, skip to about 8 minutes, 45 seconds. All right, episode 39. Crazy to think that it's been 39 episodes already. I didn't mention anything on the last podcast, but the release of the Colen Brothers podcast was actually the date of the 6-month anniversary of dropping the podcast. I started June 21st is when I released the first 3 episodes, and it's been quite a 6 months. A lot has changed. It's kind of all during the pandemic, and had to rethink how I was going to do this thing a couple different times to make it through, and it's just all good learning lessons. I'm really excited about it. So thanks everybody for listening for that long. It's a big achievement. I think they say something like I don't know, a big percentage of podcasts fail after the first 3 months. So I think we've doubled that already, and I have no plans of slowing down, and a lot of big ideas to make it better. So thank you guys all for helping make this possible. If you guys don't listen to it, there's no point in me recording these. But I think even if nobody did listen, I think I would still record these just because of how much fun it was. So it's Boxing Day today. I hope everyone had a wonderful Christmas if you celebrate, and a wonderful whatever else, just time off work if you got that at the very least. To everybody, hope everyone got some good gifts. The podcast definitely took an upgrade. We got some new mic arms that will hopefully be shown in the new year in the new studio maybe, and couple lights that you guys can actually see me when I do the Zoom calls in that dark little office. So lots of upgrades. I think my favorite gift of all was this giant hoodie I got that I'm currently wrapped up in and will probably not be taking off until spring. But hopefully everyone got what they deserved and what they hoped for, and got to see some people. I know we did a lot of Zoom calls here the last couple of days. It just, seeing all the people we usually see in person, and I hope that was good enough for everybody. I know it's not the perfect solution, and there's a lot of sadness, and it seemed like everyone I was talking to had a little bit of a story of kind of what they were missing out on this year. But adversity is what makes everybody stronger, and I think everyone's going to come through this with a new viewpoint and a lot of what's the word? I don't know, understanding or compassion, whatever it is. I hope that whatever you're going through, you come out with a little bit of positivity throughout this whole thing. So today's guest, his name's Trevor Hoffart, and he was kind of one of those ones. I know sometimes I talk about on this podcast where I just kind of follow my gut, and I have a weird feeling and I just kind of follow it through. I was on Lex Friedman, who I talk about on every podcast. People are probably sick of hearing about him, but he has kind of a cool way. He's cultivated a really cool comment section on his LinkedIn and his other social medias, where it's a lot of positivity, kind of the opposite of what you are traditionally seeing on the internet in terms of how people act. And it's really cool. And they're having some discussion about some Russian literature, and this guy from Red Deer was kind of chiming in, had a couple good things to say. And I look into his page, and he specializes in electric cars. And I thought, oh man, that's kind of cool. And I just had this weird feeling. I was like, oh man, I'm just going to reach out to him on a whim here and see if he'd be willing to come on. And sure enough, he was. And I didn't know what we would talk about other than that. I had a couple questions on cars, and started there, and then just I had a feeling that we'd have lots to talk about, and we did. We talked about politics and bettering yourself and transitioning from a different industry into a new one, and kind of what that takes. We talked about video games, and just one of those ones. I always find it funny that when you go into some of these interviews, you have no idea where it's going to go, and you just have a feeling that's going to go somewhere fun. I'd kind of just assumed, maybe this will be a little bit of a shorter one, maybe hour and a half, 2 hours, and we ended up going the full 3 hours. I almost pissed my pants at the end. He wanted to get into some other pretty hefty topics at the end, but I had to cut just because I was going to pee my pants. So I'm sure Trevor will be on in the future. I'm sure some people that know me are going to be kind of surprised at how little I push back on some of the stuff surrounding EV vehicles, and I think I have a lot stronger of opinion on some of these things. But you guys have to understand that people are coming on. I don't want to make it a battleground and have somebody really stand behind their opinions. If it was someone that was specialized in this and this was their industry and they were out proselytizing about it, but Trevor's just, he's learning this industry himself, and is just very excited about it. And I don't want to kind of poo-poo all over that. I push back on a couple different things, but if you're hoping for a full out brawl, that's not what I want. I want, that can be on the second episode when people come back. I want people to have a good time on this and, get to know them once they know that, I'm not trying to hurt them in any way and I'm not trying to make them look bad, then we can get into that kind of stuff. And sometimes when I have people on that I know a little bit better, I can do that right from the start. But I think at this point, I just want everybody to have a good time and to make this kind of a welcoming place for people to come on and show their opinions. And I'm going to push back a little bit. Obviously, I'm not going to let shit fly that is completely flying in the face of what I think is the truth. But yeah, so that's kind of her in a nutshell. Thank you everybody for everyone listening that downloaded an episode of the podcast on Christmas Day. I can't think of why you would be thinking of me on your special day, but I just hadn't been posting much on social media, and as much as I don't like posting on social media, it's very much apparent that on days that throw a couple stories up on Instagram, the downloads are much better, and you have to stay consistent with that, even if it's not something I like. But over Christmas, I just took a little bit of a break, wasn't very active on it, so I just figured, probably nobody's really downloading. And then I signed in to check the downloads when I went to record this intro, and a whole bunch of people downloaded on Christmas. So thank you guys for that. I don't know how I ended up in your noggins on Christmas, but that I don't know why. It just seemed very special to me, and it kind of warmed my heart this morning seeing that. So that's a cool idea, and I'm hoping that by next Christmas there'll be a lot more people on this journey with us, learning and discovering new people like Trevor that maybe opens their eyes to a different way to look at things. I got a couple really fun interviews coming up in the future, and I've got some people that have said yes, but just wanted to get through the Christmas holidays and all this craziness first, and we'll probably be coming on in the new year. So really excited for what we're going to bring to you guys and kind of some of the areas I'm going to expand into. Having the Coen brothers on was such a cool experience of kind of chasing my dreams and getting to have people on that I thought I would have to wait a couple of years before I get on that type of size. It's really invigorated me to kind of take some bigger swings at some people that are maybe harder to get onto a small podcast. But, every once in a while, there's going to be somebody that recognizes what you're doing and will give you a shot. So I'm going to keep swinging at those. Like I say every week, if you guys can help follow on social media, the VonDubCast, that really helps. Sharing the posts when I share them if you want to go the extra mile. Hopefully have some merch in the new year sometime coming out if you want to support that way. Hoping to have some sort of advertising on the podcast at some point, something I really believe in, maybe something that's close to me, some local guys. Once that happens, if you support there. And then the biggest thing is just telling a friend. If you find an episode that you really like, maybe somebody that's really into electric cars, send this episode their way or into any of the topics that we talk about. That's kind of how these things grow, and it means a lot to me when people are passing them on. And that's the biggest compliment I can get is when someone messages, "Oh, I love that episode. I pass it to my buddy who is into that type of thing. I think he's going to really like it too." Nothing warms my heart quite like that. So that's another big thing you guys can do. And hope you guys had a great holiday. I had a great holiday, and excited to really take this thing to the next level in 2021. And hopefully we can get a little bit of breathing room with all the COVID stuff and get back to a little bit more normalcy and get some warmer weather so we can get outside. But that's all on the horizon. I think there's a lot to be excited for. And, there's a lot of doom and gloom out there and you can find it, but try and temper that with a little bit of positivity in your day wherever you can find it, whether that's with your family or with your friends, wherever that needs to be. Look out for yourself and find those moments. Mental health is the number one thing, and whatever form that takes for whatever you need, you understand that better than anybody will, and nobody can ever understand that. So just make sure you know that fact and really stick to it, because that's what's going to get you through the tough times. All right. I think that's everything I had to say. So I hope you guys really like this episode, and I will see you guys in the outro. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here, Trevor. Interesting topic to get into, electric vehicles.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Not very many people in Alberta want to talk about electric vehicles. So
that was kind of one of the main. Yeah, that was what I was really curious about. I feel like there's for that market, that's an interesting way to start, and a lot of pushback, I would presume. But maybe before we get into that, where did your interest in electric vehicles start?
So I was a cook most of my career. And over the last year or so, I've kind of been noticing the economic ripples that have been happening. And I feel like restaurants are kind of susceptible to losing your job.
For sure.
So I was kind of tumbled into AI through Lex Friedman, his podcast. Yeah. So I kind of got interested in the AI thing. And then, of course, found Elon Musk talking about Tesla. Yeah. And I realized the link between AI and Tesla, and then also being implemented into an electric vehicle, I was like, oh, well, that's really cool as well. That's like autonomous vehicles we're talking about. So as Elon Musk has drawn more attention, I've clearly seen that there's a shift happening in the vehicle market. And I've always been kind of wanting to do something other than cooking. So I kind of tumbled into sales this time last year, and got to see firsthand the PHEVs and the EVs that are available on the market right now. And I started at Hyundai last January and realized that nobody is talking about electric vehicles at all. Like in Alberta, the market is pretty small, but the market that's there is like serious buyers, right? So as a salesperson, I just kind of figured, well, I'm interested in the AI thing personally. And as a job, working as a car salesperson, looking into electric vehicles just seemed like the right place to kind of focus my attention on. As that's a growing market, right? So if there's a growing market and there's nobody that's knowledgeable about that market, like what do you do? Right.
No, for sure.
So I just learned a lot about electric vehicles in the process of getting started in the sales gig. So
okay, and do you sell exclusively? Do you just sell all cars and that's your specialty is EV, or is that all you sell is just EV vehicles?
Funny enough, I don't sell very many electric vehicles, or maybe not funny enough. Kind of expected in Alberta. But the people who have bought them have been incredibly knowledgeable. They've been really awesome, and they tend to know the other buyers as well.
Right. And
so I don't sell just electric vehicles. I sell mostly the gas-powered ones, but I'd much prefer to just focus only on the electric ones if I could.
Yeah, but it's just kind of building that market up and making sure that you get your name out there as an expert in that field. It's funny to hear that the people that are coming in, they've done their research. That probably keeps you on your toes to make sure you know your shit, hey?
And that's just it. Yeah. When I first was getting started, I was made fun of by some of the managers and stuff being like, the people who are coming in are going to know more about this product than you will. And I'm like, well, not if I'm doing my job right.
Makes you learn on the fly, learn quickly. Hey,
that's right. Yeah.
What was some of the things that you found interesting and maybe surprised you as you dove into that and learned more about it?
So one of the common things coming into the car industry, one of the common things that I had heard about electric vehicles was that they don't work in winter. The ranges are too short to be practical for people. They're too expensive, the high upfront cost, and they're actually not as good for the environment as people are claiming that they are. And I went in with all of these same assumptions as everybody else, right? And while I was doing my researching, I realized that the average person who lives in town drives about 50 kilometers a day. So if you've got a 100-kilometer battery range, you've got enough to cover yourself for your daily commute plus some extra in case you needed it. So even 100 kilometers was considered practical, in my opinion. And then to see some of the ranges up to like 400, 500, 600-kilometer ranges, I was like, oh, these are clearly practical, right? So that kind of threw that out the window. Then I heard, of course, they lose their efficiency in winter, right? They get really bad in winter. And then I found out that it was about 40% of the range, that the advertised range of the vehicle is lost just due to the winter. And I was like, well, why? Like, what is it that's actually draining all of that battery? And it turns out that it's heating the cabin. Right. So heating the cabin is they were using these little resistive heaters, which are very inefficient in terms of creating heat out of electricity. Right. They're just awful. So that was what was heating these cabins. So it was no wonder they weren't warming up hot enough. They were drawing so much energy. They just were not practical. So then I found out that Hyundai actually started using heat pumps on their Kona Electric, which recycles the air inside the cabin and is much more efficient overall. And it cuts that range loss from about 40% down to 16%. Oh, wow. Which is right. So losing 16% of 400, that's like what, like 40 kilometers?
Yeah. And that was something that was very surprising to me because I had always assumed, I'd heard that too, that just electric vehicles, and maybe I hadn't even heard it. Maybe it was just my own intuition of just, growing up in northern Alberta and knowing batteries and how they work in the cold. It was kind of something that's not going to work, but it's cool to see that it's actually a whole different problem, and it makes a lot of sense that would be something that could be overlooked just because you look at the kind of the nexuses of where EV evolution is starting. It's California, well, I guess kind of Texas now, but
now Texas,
making a big move, but in definitely warmer climates. And I think a lot of the time, they probably do some cold weather testing just to make sure, but it's probably not the highest of priority. So we kind of come second on that sort of stuff. But that's kind of interesting to hear that Hyundai is looking to solve that problem, and I'm sure it's not far behind because those markets, I'm sure they go for the lowest hanging fruit, the easy markets, the Californias, the Texases, those, but then eventually those saturate, and you're going to be looking for other markets too. So I'm sure
that's just it. Yeah,
Canada's next on the list to really bring it into the market, not just with what's there, but actually technologically built for an Alberta winter.
That's right. Yeah. And not too long after, I just found out that the Model Y from Tesla was also utilizing that heat pump system. So it looks like they're kind of looking at, as a whole, how to solve that problem. And heat pumps definitely seem to be a way to make that a little more practical. Uh-huh. And then charging was another problem that I was concerned of with the electric vehicles, and found out that you can, on just a 110 house charger, it takes about 16 hours, but you could charge your car from empty to full, right? But realistically, you're not going to be driving the full, like, say, 400, 500 kilometer range daily, right? Mm-hmm. You're probably only going to need a few hours charging. So even that is not really a problem anymore either, right? So I was like, oh, that's really cool. The other thing I found out researching electric vehicles was the cost of ownership. I figured that they would be pretty pricey to replace those batteries. And of course, the batteries are the most expensive piece to replace in electric vehicles, like by a magnitude of like 100. Yeah. But everything else doesn't really require any regular maintenance. There's not a lot of moving parts, so there's not very much servicing that needs to be done. Right. There's no oil to change, so there's no oil changes. So the regular maintenance and all of that is way lower for an electric vehicle than a traditional gas-powered vehicle. Right. And then, of course, to charge the vehicle, you have to pay for the electricity. But in Alberta, the last I checked, it was 8 cents per kilowatt hour to fill that up. Right. I can't remember the exact conversion from kilowatt hour to gas. What's it called? Gas.
Miles per gallon.
Well, liters per 100 kilometers equivalent of electricity. I can't remember the exact conversion there, but it's 8 cents for 1 kilowatt hour, and it's 93 cents for a liter of gas. Yeah. Right. On a good day. It's exactly on a good day, and that's only going to get worse as the new carbon tax comes into play. Right.
Yeah. You don't need to tell me about it. That's my life, baby. That's what we're all about.
That's just it, right?
Which is funny, being so interested in EV myself, and I think it was less EV, it was more Tesla that kind of got me into it, which sounds like it's very similar to you. And actually, it might have been on Lex's podcast, or maybe it was somebody else, but they were talking about Tesla and more so Elon Musk. And they just said what's so special about Elon Musk is he saw that there was a problem, right, with the emissions, and that an electric vehicle was going to be the future. But you were never going to get people to make that jump for altruistic reasons. Nobody.
Correct.
As much as we like to talk about altruistic reasons, and you can talk about till you're blue in the face, in a capitalistic society, that's not what works. So what he set out to do was to make the best car possible be an EV car, so that the EV part of it is just an added bonus on top of it. But you're going to buy this car because it's the best thing you can drive, right? It has the best acceleration. It's fun. It's got the best technology. It's got the autonomous driving, and then that. You just get the added bonus of looking good to your friends because you're eco-friendly, but that's just part of it. And he recognized that. And I think that's so important just in business in general is to, if you want to sometimes if you want to start a movement, or if you want to bring forward something, you have to just make it undeniable, and then bring the movement as part of the package, not being that as upfront as the upfront selling feature. I just thought that was so interesting. And that's really put to words what was so special about, well, it's still special about Elon Musk and what he's doing, but it's almost the same thing with all his ventures. Once you understand that, you can start to see it in all his other stuff too.
What really fascinates me about Elon Musk is that he did for the car industry with Tesla what Jobs did for the music world with the iPod. Yeah. Right. He completely changed the game. And it almost seems out of left field, right? Yeah. But both of them, reading at least their biographies, the one by Ashley Vance and the one by Isaac Walterson? What's his name now?
Could be.
Walter Isaacson. There we go. Sorry. The one by Walter Isaacson. They were talking about targeting like the main market, right? If you figure out who your person is and you make the best quality product you can, regardless of expense. Because if you make the product good enough, people will spend the money. They'll find a way to spend the money. And then it just explodes from there. right? And both of them did kind of that, Elon with the electric vehicles and Jobs with the iPod, but just completely changed the game. It was really cool.
And really, when we're talking about Elon Musk, that was kind of his second. I mean, he did it with PayPal first, right? Like that was his first,
exactly,
like changing the game, taking the market and flipping it on its head, and just making a product that everybody has to use. And it's not, the way he targeted it was that any e-commerce, which is a huge burgeoning when PayPal was first starting, he saw that wave and just hopped on his Tesla surfboard and just freaking rode that bitch right to the top of Forbes. Really, like that's
exactly.
And then he kind of got bored of that. Okay, what else can I change, right? And then he just keeps doing that. But I just love the vision that he sets with that of just not taking the easy way out, or just he sees something, and even though there's this huge gap to get there, he just invests and drives straight forward, right? Like space travel. That wasn't.
And one thing that happens when you do that is you leave a wave of disruption behind you, right? And that's what the car industry right now is going through.
Yes.
When I was getting started in car sales, just in general, I found out I'm more of an analyst than I am a salesman. I really like to research and do all the work to figure out the trends that are happening and whatnot. And like right now, there's massive ripples going throughout the car industry. Sales have been slowing for new car sales since 2017, the last time I checked the stat there. So new vehicle sales are actually going down, and yet new electric vehicles are being registered more every year. So the market for electric vehicles is growing while the overall market itself is shrinking. So that's something that's fascinating to me as well.
Yeah, very
because then you look at the original manufacturers like Hyundai, like Ford, like GM, right? You look at all these guys and you see, okay, what are you doing for electric vehicles? And you don't see that much.
Yeah.
Like you don't see that much at all. Ford has just dropped their Mustang Mach-E, which is already a contentious vehicle in the first place, right? For a market that is basically untested in Ford's eyes, right? So they're competing with Tesla, which I like, and their vehicle looks good overall. I'm interested to see how it plays out. But Ford is unless Ford actually gets to the market first with their F-150, Ford looks like they're a little behind the ball too.
Right. And that was something that I was curious about, because I've heard lots of people talk about, I can't remember who specifically, but I guarantee I've heard this from multiple people. They say like, yeah, Tesla's great, but just wait until one of the big players really puts their weight behind it. They know cars, they know how to do it. And I always thought like I can kind of see where you're coming from, but it never rang true with me, because it was just like, I think what Elon Musk has in his vision is going to keep him ahead of the game and keep him wanting to move forward, where he's not afraid of some of those risks. But I'm just curious with you, if you've really looked into this market, who do you think is that number 2 player that's on its way? If that was to hold true and there was someone that was going to catch Tesla, who do you think is the closest at this point?
Are we talking original manufacturers or startups as well?
Either way, both.
So startups, there's a startup in China called NIO. And NIO is looking really, really big as a player. I'm not sure. I haven't done too much research into the cost of their models, their efficiency versus the Tesla models, like where they're at for profitability and all that. But I mean, startups lose money all the time, and continue to stay in existence. So
Tesla.
I don't know exactly. So I can't measure the performance based on that. But as far as the original manufacturers go, like GM is starting to throw a lot of weight behind electric vehicles. Hyundai's been doing it for a couple of years now. And actually this coming year, they're about to launch their Ioniq brand, which is their lineup that's entirely focused on electric vehicles. And they are starting with the Ioniq 5, which is supposed to be somewhere around the Tucson, so a mid SUV kind of segment, which is one of the most popular segments in the mainstream market. So we're going to see what happens. But Volkswagen has also invested a ton into the electric vehicle market. They seem to have given up with the gas powered market. It almost seems like after the Dieselgate scandal and all of that happened, they just kind of turned off from that and are diving really far into electric vehicles.
Do you know quite a bit about that Dieselgate scandal?
Only from what I've watched on Dirty Money.
Oh, okay, yeah, because I was going to say, I remember learning about it in school, because when I was in university, that was something we covered. That was like a whole section of it, was that because it was happening right then, and I can't remember all the details, but they had fudged their numbers on their their environmental efficiencies on their emission numbers, right?
Yeah, they built a workaround for the emissions test specifically. So
Oh,
basically, they shut off the emissions for the test, and then while it was on the road, that was basically null and void, and it was emitting just like usual. So
yeah,
then, when they tested the tailpipe emissions, they realized that they had been cheated.
yeah,
and it cost them a lot.
Oh yeah, they got a huge fine from that. Hey,
Massive recalls. There was huge fines. Like I think Canada just finally settled how much they were gonna lay on the charge for them. So yeah, it was massive.
Them Germans, they're always trying to make them by.
Yeah, right. But that being said, I mean, the Volkswagen products speak for themselves. They're solid products.
Well, all German engineering is just top of the line. They always just
it's fascinating. Yeah,
it is. It's funny how you can see cultures like that, how it instills things moving forward, and you can see it come through in what they build. Just like Japanese engineering, it's just
Oh my gosh,
just
Toyota is just incredible.
It is, right? And that was and another one I was hearing a lot of noise about was apparently Porsche was coming out with an electric vehicle that was supposed to be, one of the biggest competitors with Tesla. Have you looked into those at all?
The Porsche Taycan, yeah. It's pretty popular as an alternative to like the Roadster.
Yeah, I guess you're not just going to buy a mid-size sedan when you're going
that's
to
right.
Porsche, right? Yeah.
Yeah, you're not looking at family vehicle. You're not looking for daily drivers. You're looking for like style, status, that kind of thing. And the Porsche Taycan definitely delivers on that. But I personally would still favor a Roadster, as I'm more of a Tesla fanboy.
I hear you. I'm just curious, like less so in terms of like successability. That's not the word I wanted. Like I feel like those mid-size. If you take out like sales numbers out of it and just look at the actual technology itself, like who is on the cutting edge? Like it might be more expensive for a Porsche, but do you think they're doing it best? Like I feel like Tesla is that gold standard, but just on technology, not with how successful it's going to be, but just like the next best
thing. Yeah. I actually have been thinking about that a lot because as far as that goes, like how do you catch up to the amount of driving data that Tesla has, right? How do you catch up to that? And the only way you do it is if you have an established customer base that is 100% willing to give you all that data. And I know that it seems a lot of the cars nowadays are starting to join that Internet of Things and start connecting to the network on a regular basis, which means that drivers are starting to generate more and more data for themselves. The new safety features, the autonomous safety features that are coming in to the vehicles nowadays, things like the pedestrian, forward pedestrian collision alert. I can't remember if that's the name of it or not, but basically it detects whether or not there's someone in front of you and it applies the brakes before you can. It's trying. Quite handy. Yeah, it's really cool, right? Those use machine learning algorithms as well, but I don't know if they use neural networks. And I don't know any other business or any other of the manufacturers using neural networks for their autonomous driving. And LiDAR is good. Don't get me wrong. LiDAR is good, but LiDAR has a ceiling. Yeah. LiDAR doesn't learn.
Whereas if you're using neural nets, you're gonna expand that learning curve so quick.
Eventually, you're gonna pass it, right? Eventually, you're gonna pass LiDAR, and you're not gonna catch it. And each improvement on that neural network is going to make it that much more efficient. So, and I don't think there's anyone else.
And then each. It's kind of that self-fulfilling prophecy or a feedback loop, because now the more data that goes into those neural networks, or the more Teslas you get on the road, the more data goes into that neural network, the more machine learning it can do, and the faster it updates, and it's just kind of all cycling in, right? So that's a good bet to put it on, right? Like Elon Musk, that's always what he talks about, just like, this is the right bet. This is going to be, it takes time, and it all comes with it's all part of a process, and you're gonna see what it's gonna be, and you almost have to trust his vision again, which is, you think people would be more on board with trusting his vision after seeing success after success after success.
You would think so.
You think so, but people still second guess him, and it's amazing to see, right? Like,
well, even Jobs was wrong. Jobs was wrong.
Yeah. So and Tesla's had its flops and its misses, right? But overall, when you look at his when you zoom out to that 1,000-foot view, you really see what he is, and it's hard to bet against, in my opinion, at least.
I think so as well. No, I'm right there with you. Like I would not bet against Elon, not at this point.
No shit.
Yeah, not at this point.
So then there's kind of two separate things, though. There's kind of like the autonomous vehicles and then the electric vehicles, right? And they kind of go hand in hand because of Tesla.
Right. A lot of people think they're synonymous, but they're
exactly.
not.
And it's a completely different thing. And then there's Waymo and there's all these autonomous drivers. And it's just funny that Tesla just happens to be at the cutting edge of both of those fields, but they're two very separate fields. So maybe in terms of autonomous driving, and again, maybe I'm overestimating. I don't know where your expertise lies. If I go outside of it, bring me back in. But
sure.
From what you've seen of the industry, where do you think that next best competitor on the autonomous side is?
I just seen an article today talking about how GM is getting more involved in the connectivity side of things. They're trying to get more revenue out of their connected driving features that they charge for. They call it their Super Cruise. That Super Cruise looks really cool, but I'm not sure how good it's going to be compared to Hyundai. Yeah. Hyundai is teasing the Ioniq 5 on LinkedIn. I see ads all the time on LinkedIn from Hyundai teasing the Ioniq 5 fully autonomous driving.
Oh,
and
really?
If that's the case, then I have to say Hyundai.
Hey, there you go.
I have to say Hyundai. If you didn't. And basically the case, right? No.
Oh, that's awesome.
No, I like Hyundai as an overall brand just because of where they're at in the electric vehicle game. Yeah. They're the only manufacturer right now, aside from Volkswagen, really diving full into it. Their plan is to capture 10% of the market share by 2030.
Oh wow, that's a big.
And not just with battery electric vehicles either. They're talking 7 to 8% of their sales will be coming from electric vehicles, and about 3 to 4% coming from fuel cells.
Yeah. And that's where I've been very interested because like we said, Tesla just happens to be the cutting edge for both autonomous driving and electric vehicles. So like you said, people think they're synonymous. But where I'm curious is there's so much pushback, as I'm sure you've seen, with electric cars in certain areas. It's everywhere. There's going to be pushback. But I think Alberta, because of our industry and that, is very critical of it. Where I'm interested to see, and I feel like that almost becomes criticism of the autonomous vehicle craze or whatever you want to call it. But I'm curious, once we see the other players that aren't, strictly EV come into this autonomous driving game, that's going to open the door, because now you're going to have a whole bunch of people who, aren't even aware of the huge leaps forward in autonomous vehicles that there are, because they completely write it off because it's tied to the EV. But now you have that same autonomous driving capability in a gas powered car. I think that's going to really, it doesn't really change much, but I think the perception of it will change, and then that will open people's eyes to, oh, this is the future. And then they get on board, and it's not so tied to Tesla and to, Waymo and these kind of things. I feel like that's going to be a big step forward.
I see what you mean. Like, kind of like how easing people into autonomous driving with gas-powered vehicles and then switching them to electric becomes easier later.
Right, and more so just a
little more familiar with it.
Yeah, and I think it'll just open the door to more people. I feel like there's just a lot of people that are ignorant of the autonomous driving gains in general, just because of it being tied to
I see what you mean.
Yeah. And they don't even look at it. But then once
I'd say we're kind of there already. Like these new vehicles that we're selling right now, they have the autonomous safety features, the autonomous braking. They have the rear cross traffic alert that is linked to autonomous braking as well. So they've got emergency braking for basically every type of situation right now. And now the new Elantra that just came out has a turning junction collision alert, something like that, where if you're turning left into a turn, and if the camera in the front of the vehicle detects a vehicle moving maybe too fast, and it's going to detect that you're going to be in a collision, it'll apply the brake before you even can. Like it's so quick.
Yeah.
And there's also lane keep assist that's on these new vehicles.
Yeah.
And the lane keep assist and highway drive assist are keeping them centered in the middle of their lane, driving hands free essentially, that, combined with the adaptive cruise control. Realistically, these are all the sensors that Tesla's using. They're just feeding it into a computer that learns how to drive itself.
It's just got a better brain.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I hadn't even thought of that. You're so right. Those things are kind of sneaking up on people. I think people just myself included, because I just did this, I think a lot of times you don't even think of that as autonomous. It's just part of the vehicle because you're still hands on the wheel. You're still making those turns. You don't think of those type of features as autonomous driving. But you're right. That's the basics. That's the backbone of it. It just has a smarter controller in the Teslas, right, with all those neural networks.
Exactly.
Whereas it's just very the use case is very strict to where they apply on that, and it's just about expanding that. But that's where it starts, is getting more, like we said, getting more data available for these other companies so they can start to play that catch up game with their learning. And it's funny, you bring up Lex Friedman right at the start, and that's kind of how I found you. It connected in the comment section of a Lex Friedman post. And for anybody that's listened to more than one episode of this podcast, you know that I bring up Lex Friedman on every single podcast because he's just one of my big influences. He's just such a smart guy. But he talks about just in AI in general, but especially with autonomous driving, is how much step forward or how much. Whoa, my talking is not on point today. Too much tea. How much of the steps forward that are taken is by the edge cases, right? Where the Tesla works 99% of the time, it's driving you around, and then that one weird edge case happens where a skateboarder kick flips off the side, and that's just something new that this neural network has never seen. And how much steps forward are taken by these edge cases, and it's so interesting, and that's what puts so much pressure on having wide data sets, because you need all these edge cases for it to learn. It has to be all these odd things. And they talk about one of the biggest things, the cars and stuff are decently easy to read. You can figure it out. Not too much craziness happens. It's pedestrians that are the unpredictability of a pedestrian is very hard for these neural networks to get all these edge cases in. So that's why you need these really wide data sets for them to learn and to take these next steps forward, right?
Well, and drivers intentionally running into the vehicles, right? Like how many is that? How many edge cases can come from that? Because that's not a common occurrence, at least yet. I know there's a lot of anger towards the electric vehicle movement, and there's some people who just see it as a rich man's toy, and especially are like the bitter, resentful types that are just looking for a reason to hate somebody. An electric vehicle is that for them. They have connected that somehow to status and money and all of this. But it's realistically attainable for everyone right now, right? Like it's pricey, don't get me wrong, but it's coming down, and it's coming down faster and faster.
Yeah, and it's becoming more widely available and less than a rich man's toy.
But there's a lot of anger towards it. It's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
I was set up at the farmers market downtown in Red Deer a couple times, just talking to the public and engaging with them about electric vehicles. And I'd have people yelling at me like, "Fuck you and your electric vehicle," and I'm like, "What?"
Unfortunately, I know a lot of those people. Yeah. and that's me. And growing up in Slave Lake, Alberta, that was very much the epicenter of that type of thinking. There's always something that I was always interested in Tesla and thought they were high, but I was not mentioning that to most people. Right before that, if you say that to the wrong person, you're going to get your head knocked off.
Yeah, for real.
So it's kind of I was curious to talk to you about this because I've never really had these type of conversations for that reason. It's usually, you look up these things, you watch these podcasts, and you listen to Lex Friedman interview Elon Musk about the next step and where this is going to take, and you're so interested in it, but then you just kind of lock that away. Let's not talk about that unless they're really the right circumstances in front of you.
Yeah. And I've never really been afraid about talking about electric vehicles like that because they're just interesting to me, right? Like if you knew there was something that was cheaper to maintain than your car, that was better for the environment and was just more of a pleasure to drive and cost the same amount or less, like wouldn't you want that? I know I would. So I was like, well, if it's going to cost me less overall and it's a better vehicle, why would I not want it? Right. And that's I've always questioned people about like, okay, what about you doesn't like the electric vehicle, or what about the electric vehicle don't you like? Right.
And like you said, there's the basic arguments, like the biggest thing I always hear, and the only one that I kind of, see some real meat to the argument is the conflict minerals in battery technology, right? And that's the one where I'm like, okay, you got a point there. I think that is, but I feel like it's kind of a cherry picked argument. If you're going to argue about conflict minerals and you're talking on your iPhone, I mean, like, shit, it's technology.
I never point that stuff out to those people because I don't try to start those kinds of fights, but you're absolutely right. And there's better and worse for the environment as well. And if you there's two different ways to extract lithium. that's used for the lithium ion batteries. Cobalt is fair enough. There's a big push against cobalt, and there seems to be a movement away into new batteries that don't require cobalt. But lithium seems to be at the core of them, and that seems to be where people seem to have an issue with it when I've talked to them anyways. And it always comes down to like, oh, lithium extraction is worse for the environment than extracting oil. Right. And there is definitely an argument to be said about
for sure
the hard minerals extraction, but there's actually the brine extraction as well. Like lithium comes in lithium salt in just the same mix up as the oil shale, for example, that's extracted, right? So I think that's what it is. I'm really not well versed in the vernacular of oil and gas. Yeah. Yeah, so I'm not well versed there, but I know that the extraction methods for the brine lithium are the same as the extraction methods for our oil and gas as well in Alberta or oil, I guess, specifically. So realistically, the human rights issues and all of that come up are in countries that are extracting hard mineral, and that's really hard on the body. It's really hard on everything, the environment, everything, right? And we should be moving away from that. But there's definitely better ways you can extract lithium that still have a better impact on the environment. And actually Tesla down in the States, down in Texas, I think it was, just bought a plot of land to mix clay with their brine and then separate it afterwards from there.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so they can actually withdraw it from the land without destroying it.
Mm-hmm. And that's something that I was curious about, just because you do see that, there's a couple big arguments that you always hear, and that's one of them. And I was just curious, if you had seen in the industry them take that to heart and see what kind of things they can do to fix it, because, lithium's one of the big ones, but it's also, you need trace elements of all these, for these newer battery technologies. And it's not all batteries, just like things that it's just tech really. And it's, and there's all these trace elements, and there's, when you go down that rabbit hole of where they're getting them and some of the like you say, human rights violations that are going on surrounding the industry, it's definitely something that I'm concerned about and is going to be a concern. But the first step that I want to see is just, okay, do you acknowledge that is a concern? Yes. Are you moving towards it? Okay, I can get on board as long as you understand that. As long as you're not trying to play the game of no, it's not happening. Just let's that's always my biggest sticking point. I'm wondering. So the market, both autonomous and EV, have taken huge steps forward. It seems like every year there's giant leaps forward. What were some of the biggest hurdles that were kind of holding back EV vehicles? Maybe just take us through, like, if you've done this research. Cost, that was the biggest one.
The cost of the battery, like battery technology, just really wasn't there. When Tesla was first getting started, they were making battery cell packs by just like taking a battery cell and putting it in a pack and just running these cells into the pack. And it was, they would run too hot. They faced a lot of issues bringing down the battery there, but it also drove a lot of innovation in battery technology as well. And even now, battery prices are coming way, way down. Before, you'd have to like spend something like $60,000 to get something to go 100 kilometers on a range. Like, it was bad. But again, Elon didn't care about cost. He just made the best possible product ever. Learned what he could about batteries in the process, and then made the batteries better over time. And now the price per kilowatt hour has dropped massively. And I think I've just seen a post on LinkedIn about battery prices being around $135 per kilowatt hour now, when they were something like $600 back in 2014 or 2012. Wow. So it was a big drop in the last little while. That's really been like bringing the cost of the vehicles down. But like you said, it's really hard to do that if you're doing it for financial gain, because there's no way you're going to be profitable doing it until you can do it cheaper than everyone else and actually have something that's practical and in demand.
It's almost like equivalent to R&D, right? Like, it's always those things where there's a lot of expense to it, but if you can get past that point of investment where it starts to return, that's when you start to see it. But it's definitely a long slog of kind of banging your head against the wall as you're trying to work.
As you said earlier, you have to do it for altruistic gains. You can't do it for monetary gain, because there's no monetary gain there until it's like the pioneer's conundrum, right? Like, if you're going to go in, someone's got to be first. Someone's got to be first. And everyone else who comes after is going to get there faster and cheaper than you did. So you got to take that first mover advantage, which I think Tesla converted quite well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and they took it and ran with it, right? And they
Oh
made sure that before anybody catches on to what we're doing, we want to put a lot of space between us. We want to be so far ahead that we buy ourselves years before anybody's even close to competing with us, right? Which is so smart, and it's so cool to see that kind of bet pay off.
And then taking that advantage and building on vertical integration into the new market as well, right? Mm-hmm. Like the Gigafactory, when all of the Gigafactories are open and online, I imagine Tesla is going to be the number one producer of electric vehicles, no matter who's coming to catch up. I know Volkswagen announced, the CEO of Volkswagen said that they wanted to sell, I think it was 1 million vehicles, 1 million electric vehicles a year by 2025. Mm-hmm. Which, I mean, that's an impressive number. Don't get me wrong. That's still a lot of electric vehicles every year. Yeah. But compared to where I mean, even Tesla's at right now, Tesla's at, I think last time I seen was 110,000 per quarter. So under 500,000 a year is what their actual production is. But once the Gigatech factories come up, those things can run autonomously all day, every day.
Yeah.
So they're going to be tough to keep up with. Let's say that.
Exactly. And especially with how Elon Musk views innovation, and those factories are just going to keep getting better, and they're going to use those neural networks to refine and find improvements, and it's just going to be running like a top. I would imagine like it's going to be. I think it's probably going to change the entire manufacturing industry probably, because you see some of these. There's some amazing AI fueled production going on. I think I just read a thing. Maybe it was Spain or Germany. They have an entirely autonomous production area, and it was to watch just videos of it all happening at once. Just these huge floors, all not a person in sight, just all these machines doing everything. It's amazing, but that's going to be normal to everybody. That's going to be the next steps once you start to see it, and once you start to see
absolutely. Which of course then is like what happens to the job market with that. That terrifies me.
Very much so.
It terrifies me.
Yeah.
I ran into Andrew Yang a little bit ago.
Oh wow.
Yeah, well, I did not run into him like face to face, but I was introduced to him about a year and a half ago, and I read The War on Normal People and listened to his case for where we're headed, given the automation, and I'm like, oh goodness me, oh my! Like he talks about even just self-driving semi trucks hitting the marketplace. Yeah. We're like Hyundai's been working on that for the last little while. Tesla's got the semi truck that's fully autonomous. I've been hearing about vehicles for FedEx and UPS being used for autonomous highway driving. Yeah, Amazon's been doing it for a while, so we're here. Yeah, like we're here.
Yeah, and it seems like there's only a select few kind of banging that drum of, hey, we're gonna have to come up with some solution. There's gonna be a lot of people out of work, and we're gonna have to figure something out. So Andrew Yang, his solution is UBI, Universal Basic Income. What are your thoughts on that?
I've been a pro UBI fan since I read The War on Normal People.
Yeah.
I was instantly converted with that book, and I've been an advocate for it since.
So what are maybe for someone that I think I flip flop all the time. I really, some days I think, we're just not there yet. People just, I feel like it's definitely something eventually we're going to need, and there's ways to do it that will make it effective. But then there's some days where I'm like, there's no other choice. We need it now, especially with the pandemic and that sort of thing is, what I was so disappointed about was, it's a perfect test case where you can find things and you can try and put different incentives on it so that people that don't need that universal basic income can do things with it to, I feel like so much of society right now is about showing off your virtue. And I feel like there's such an opportunity to weaponize, well, weaponize is kind of a harsh way to put it, but weaponize that need to be seen in a good light and tack that onto it. So now the people that need that universal basic income, they can use it. They can use that as their platform to make sure that their basic needs are met, and then they can go from there. But then the people that don't need it, like maybe you or me, you could find something where, it's tied to your Instagram where, if you donated your UBI for that month, your Instagram has a different color. I don't know. Right. Like I'm just trying to throw things at the wall, but I think there's ways that you can do it. But what are kind of the main tenets of, does he talk about in the book how he would roll it out, or is he just saying that it's a good idea?
Well, in the book, he kind of talks about, I think it was in the book. I've watched a lot of videos and talks with Andrew Yang, so I can't remember if it's the book or not anymore. It's been a while since I went through it. But he talked about using a value-added tax, getting a slice of online transactions, getting a slice of that, and then using that to fund the UBI, as well as potentially like the less effective welfare programs, rolling those away as well. And then because like one of the things he was kind of talking about was the stigma that goes along with receiving things
For
like
sure.
welfare
For sure.
or H, for example, in Alberta's case, right? So there's a big stigma attached to that, where if you're on it, you don't want to tell people you're on it, and you feel bad for being on it, and you're made to feel bad about it.
Yeah.
And your earning potential is capped.
Yeah.
So like it instantly puts a cap on your earning potential. Even if you can work for a few hours a week, there's no incentive to. You're completely, you lose all your benefits if you work. If you can show
there's externalities all over with the current welfare
Exactly.
system that aren't calculated where UBI.
So there's a lot of inefficiencies, right? So if you could give up some of those benefits that either put you like right at the edge of making the same amount as a UBI, or even maybe a little bit beyond that, maybe you're making $1,200 from benefits, but you're capped, but you get $1,000 a month with unlimited earning potential, that there's an incentive to take the UBI over the benefits. So there's ways that you can make the overall system more efficient. Whether or not it would or not, I don't know. I'm not a policymaker. I'm not well versed in that at all.
Yeah, fair enough. Me neither. I'm completely guessing.
Yeah. But there certainly seemed to be a way, at least in the States. In Canada, I'm not too sure, but I don't know. There's lots I don't understand about it.
For sure. And I think
that's where the politicians need to figure that out and iron out the details.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something that a big piece of that, you kind of already mentioned it, of where that money comes from. I feel like that's always one of my big sticking points when I flip flop all the time of whether I believe in it or not. I feel like if you could find the right places to take the money from, right? And I think definitely one of those is some of the less successful welfare programs that would be improved upon and replaced by this. That's one of them. But then also where my head goes is, military industrial complex. If you could skim off of there, and maybe especially in the States compared to Canada, but both places, but there's so much where you could really take that and funnel it into a better place, or that. And then also, you could close one tax loophole in the States and fund UBI for the entire country. Right? Like, there's shit like that where it's just a no-brainer to me of like, if you could, but the problem that will never happen, because if a politician runs on, I'm going to close a tax loophole for all these big corporations, where's all that money going? Your campaign now has no funding, and you're never going to win, right? That's the
and actually Andrew Yang had an option for that as well. Is bring democracy back to the people by bringing in democracy dollars. He called them. Basically, every election cycle, I think it was something like $200 you could donate to a political politician running. Yeah, like a party or whoever's running. You can donate to a political campaign. $200. Use it or lose it. Right? You don't get to keep it. It's not your money. You only donate it to a politician that you agree with. Right?
Right.
I'm not too sure about that, but even $200 being donated into the actual political system for political campaigns and whatnot would massively outweigh the amount of money that goes in from corporations. So either corporations have to bump up the amount of money they're spending to buy politicians, or the citizens are usually easier to convince than big business.
350 million people. That'd be 35 billion if it was $100 for each person. So $60 billion that would be going in. Wow. Or $70 billion that would be against all that corporate backing. That is a lot of money. I guess that would be split up between the candidates and stuff. So you'd maybe throw in, some people wouldn't use it and all that. And there's probably it's only for people over 18.
Yeah, but not all candidates get an equal distribution of the company donations either, right? So it kind of levels the playing field by flooding the amount of money that is in the system. Like, I've always been a pro-lobbyer. I think lobbying does have its place for special rights interest groups. Maybe not to the level of some unions I've seen, but I understand the idea behind lobbying.
Yeah.
Right? It makes sense to me. It does. Because how else are you going to have like a non-for-profit advocate for a movement and change in policy if they can't
monetary incentive? And that's another thing I flip flop on all the time is, I can definitely see the benefit and the place that lobbying has in the industry, but it just seems like it's all the damage that comes by allowing it in general, right? The good cases, it's now all the bad, and all the, talking about bringing democracy, the problem. The problem I see with lobbying, sorry, go on. The problem I see with lobbying is that it's just not democratic, right? Yeah. Not everybody gets to play the game. It's a fine game if everybody can play, but not everybody can play. And Andrew Yang's policy would basically allow the people to play the game, right? And use the tool. Lobbying's a tool. How it's used is really how it should be judged.
And right now, is how it's being used is only being used that way, in my opinion. This is only my opinion. But the only reason it's being used the way it is right now is because only the big businesses play.
Exactly, and that's one of the unfortunate things, is that a guy like Andrew Yang that has some of these policies that are anti big corporation. It just shows that, unfortunately, he doesn't really have a dick swinging chance in hell, right, to get in because of that, unless something changes, right? It's always this thing. If I got in, I could make a change to all these things, but that's how the system's set up, because now we'll never let you in, so you can make those changes, right? One of the biggest ones I bring up is ranked choice voting. Like, there's not really I've never heard one good argument against it. But there's a huge loss in power for the two-party system if that were to bring forward. So anybody that has that as part of their platform is immediately 96. You're not getting in there, right? Not a 10.
Yeah, so it's not getting in. Exactly.
You see things that would have almost universal benefit for everybody, and because it lowers the power of the people that have these structures built up, it'll never change, right? And that's where I was very excited about this current election season in the States for the Unity Project. Did you ever hear any whispers of that? Yeah.
Yes, with Weinstein's. Yes. That was a really cool project. I think it'll be a big thing next election. I think Andrew Yang will throw his support behind that, and it's going to be something happen.
Yeah, I think it's either going to be Andrew Yang or Tulsi Gabbard on that side that are going to really come into their own. And I thought on the other side that it'd be Dan Crenshaw, but it seems like he's kind of getting off that pedestal and kind of falling into the mainstream of just he's becoming a politician pretty quickly. It was almost like they had him at the right choice for this election cycle, where he wasn't in deep enough where he was compromised. But you can already kind of see it start to happen. It's very unfortunate with politicians. It's just yeah.
I don't know,
and not to say I don't either. Really, I'm talking out of my ass completely right now.
Yeah,
little things I've seen. I'm making some from my own brain. I actually have not a lot to back it up, but I just thought that was such a cool idea, the Unity Project, and I followed it very closely. I watched all the live streams in that, and one of the biggest eye-opening things to me was I said right from the start, as soon as it came out, I said, this is amazing, but they will never let it happen. And what did they do? They shut down their Twitter, they shut down their Facebook, they locked them all out of all this stuff. They made it, not only did they lock out their Twitter, they made it so that if you tried to tweet a link to their website or anything, it would get canceled out. You couldn't tweet anything about it. They put the kibosh on that shit so quickly as soon as it started to get a little bit of traction. And I was like, oh, that is exactly what I'm talking about. These guys, if there's a threat to their power structure, they always focus it as if it's right versus left and get everyone fighting. It's the same sides. It's just the power structure that are in place. And anything that threatens that, whether it's right or left, they don't care, as long as they keep the status quo going and what's going forward. But something like Unity, what they said, UBI was thrown about, ranked choice voting was thrown. Like, this were all big pieces of their platform, and that all takes away from that power structure. So immediately they were shut down, right? Like, it's very, very interesting to watch, and it's kind of nice to. It was bittersweet because it was kind of one of those like I told you so moments, but also like fuck, this thing I really believe in just got decapped exactly like I said it would. But it was unfortunate to see you almost sure that was going to happen, but you just hoped against hope that it wouldn't, right? Like, I find myself, it's very hard. I love changing my mind, but it's very hard to change my mind. I'm very stubborn.
Absolutely.
I have, it has to be a very strong argument to make me do it. But as soon as somebody I see your point, you're very right, I'm immediately, and I think it pisses people off sometimes. Like, my girlfriend, we'll get into an argument, and it's just getting ramped up, and she makes a good point. I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. I completely flip and say, no, I was just getting ready to fight. Like, you can't just like, let me finish all my points, then you can switch. Where I'm like, oh no, you already got me. Like,
yeah, I'm convinced. Yeah, good job, right? But I don't just change it arbitrarily. Exactly. That's the thing, right?
Yeah, it's got to be
like I'm not going to change my mind just because you disagree with me. Right? If you can show me why I'm wrong, or tell me why I might be wrong, or maybe something I'm not considering, okay, fair enough, right? But if it's just you're wrong because I say you are, sorry, like I've done too much research to just bow down to that.
Yeah, and you talk to a lot of people, and I talk to a lot of people. I love conversation is one of my favorite things. So I talk to a lot of people, and one of the biggest things over the last couple of years of what I've seen is people talking about like what is happening to society. Like, people like, just, it seems like common sense is decaying. And I think a big piece of that is because there isn't that argumentative, like that argumentative in the right way for progressive reasons, where instead of arguing, you just label them as something, and now I don't have to argue with you. I can just put you in a box because now you have this label, and okay, my whole team says that those people are bad. Okay, we don't even need to listen to their ideas. So that shuts down conversation, it shuts down arguments. And I think arguments are important, and that's how we cut our teeth. Like our
for sure,
our steel sharpens steel, or whatever that saying is. I feel like that's a lot to do with our minds, and having conversations and seeking out people that can push to your limits, right? And that's a big part of starting a podcast, was trying to find people that can push my limits and try and make me change my mind, right? And not having on people I don't respect, so I'm not going to listen to what they have to say. I want to come on, and if I ask somebody onto this podcast, I have enough, you can just assume that I'm going to respect you enough that I'm going to listen to what you have to say. Doesn't mean you can come in here with lazy arguments. I'm still going to, call you out on stuff and try. Yeah. But the whole point is to try and, add to my repertoire of knowledge by, cutting your teeth against other people. And that can be done online. I just feel like the temptation to go down bad paths online is just it's too easy for people to hide behind anonymity, and it creates negative externalities that kind of buoy up that bad side of the argument. Like, arguments are good when done right, but really bad when done poorly. And I feel like the internet is so much drawing people just to hide behind their keyboard and say awful shit because they ran on good arguments, and that alone really makes it tough to do. But if you find the right platform with the right type of people that are going to have those, like you say, a Facebook group, that's dangerous too, because you can get into echo chambers and that type of thing. But if you can find the right people, and I think something like Lex Friedman's comments, like those are the right type of people, right? It's proven the point right now that I have somebody that I Lex Friedman comments on my podcast, and it won't be the last time.
Well, I appreciate that.
But I just think that's so powerful that he created, and that's something that I look up to. Is okay, maybe 10 years from now, maybe my podcast post is where people go and they know they can comment. It's going to be a good place. People are going to add to their thoughts and really think deeply. And I think that's seeking out deep thinkers is a very important piece in how you use the internet. It can be good or bad, but it's all about the work you want to put in to find the right people and make sure that you're adding benefit to your life and not just taking in crap.
Yeah. So like one thing I kind of find that's lazy among the disagreeing types is when they take the devil's advocate position with no weight. Yeah. Right. They're like, yeah, you might be wrong here. Yeah, you're right. I might be wrong. Right. Yeah. But
tell me why.
Yeah, right. Tell me why. Yeah. Like if you think I'm wrong, tell me why. And if it's just you might be wrong, that's not practical, right? You shouldn't believe something just because somebody says it. But if you have a good reason as to why, they have to give you a better reason as to why not. Yeah. That's the kind of how I think it. And I don't find that online too much.
Yeah.
But like you said, searching out those deep thinkers and stuff that make you question that kind of stuff, not only does it like, how do I want to say it? It makes the argument stronger because you get newer information that you didn't have before, because maybe they've been thinking about the same problem in a different way.
Right.
So you suddenly get to shift your position, because the goal is you agree on a goal. I guess that's really the main thing. You have to agree that there's a goal.
Progress.
Otherwise, if the goalposts keep moving, then there's nothing to prove. Right. I guess having a goal and having those deep thinkers that you're talking about that you seek out and you start listening to, they're the ones that are worth listening to, in my opinion, because they have thought deeply about the thing, and you have something to learn by listening.
Exactly. And that's where I see people like the Lex Friedmans and the Joe Rogans of the world, because they do those deep they think deeply about things, and they practice their arguments. Because one of my favorite things is when Lex Friedman goes on Joe Rogan's podcast, because Lex is such an optimist, just the eternal optimist. He is that representation. And Joe actually is the eternal devil's advocate. He just wants to learn, and for him to learn, he will take those positions, even if he doesn't believe in them. You listen to him all the time. Right. He will just take the opposite, just to prove that you have thought this through and you have done the deep thinking. Yeah. It makes you. He's that fucking teacher in high school that's show your work. I might agree with you. You just made the best point in the world, and I completely agree with you. But I'm gonna use my skills of being a devil's advocate to make you prove that to me, right? And I think over 1,500 podcasts, he is just the most razor sharp devil's advocate you will ever see, right? That's pretty much what he's done.
That's why I love his podcast, when he gets on those deep thinkers that starts, having contentious views, or at least taking a side, right? Whenever he takes a side, or whenever the speaker takes a side, he tends to take the opposite side and just kind of poke the bear and kind of see where his argument might be a little weak.
And what I especially love is when historically you've seen him on an argument and you know where he lies on it, but then you see somebody else take his side. So then he will show his understanding of the subject by taking the other side, right?
Yeah.
It's what the Weinstein brothers call, steel manning, what like
steel manning,
straw man argument. So the opposite is a steel man. If you can take somebody's argument, right? Say somebody's arguing with you about EV vehicles and saying they're useless and all these things. So then if you can prove to them that you can make their argument back to them better than they're making it to you, and then disprove it from there, now you've pretty much won that argument, because now you've shown, I really understand where you're coming from. And then also you're missing this, and this. But then having said that, you missed A, B, C, and D. And that's where you see Joe just really excel, and it really proves to people that his knowledge base is that deep, and he has really, taken the time. And I think Eric Weinstein is very much that same thing too. He's very much the same way, just a contrarian at heart, that even if I agree with you, I'm just gonna poke the bear enough.
He likes to disagree, right? But like, I find that those types of people they're after knowledge, right?
Exactly.
Like they're just after wanting to know more. They want to know more than when they walked in, and hearing the same arguments presented to them doesn't help that situation. Right. So then you're like, okay, well, if I can't learn more about my side of the argument, let's go learn the other side. Yeah. And then you learn the other side inside and out. Then you can kind of continue arguing with yourself. And then when you see somebody who's spouting off that this is their opinion, right? Then you can test them on both sides. It's something that is common, at least in the Greeks, when I was reading about them, right? Like I can't remember the Greek's name now. I'm not well versed in philosophy, but there was a Greek who went to a city and advocated for a position and had the entire people swayed in one day, and then the next day came back to the same square with the same people, made the argument on the opposite side, and convinced them of the opposite side. and I'm like, that's impressive.
Yeah, and that's how you move forward. That's how you make progress, is understanding both sides of it, right? Have you ever heard of the ideological Turing test?
I was watching one of your podcasts and you were mentioning something about it, and yes, I only because of what you had said with it, and I think that's very true.
I think it's such a cool idea to be able to just for walking through the world, just for assessing people's willingness to do those deep thoughts. If you find somebody that can't pass the ideological Turing test on a certain subject, you know that they're probably not a good subject to test your ideas against, because they only have the one side, and you can tell that there's a fundamental failing to how they're thinking about this subject. Whereas if you can find somebody that can prove to you that they know the other side, and once that's proved to you, now you know that I can win, I can get something out of this argument. There's added knowledge. They have thought deeply on it, right? And that's just another tool to parse those deep thinkers from kind of the, just the shit talkers that think they're an expert in anything. What's that? It's not a disease, but like an ism, Dunning-Kruger, the Dunning-Kruger effect or whatever. Have you ever heard of that?
The Dunning-Kruger one is the one where incompetent people think they're competent. The worse it's something that somebody is, the more convinced they're good at it, or something like that.
Yeah, and I think that with the advent of the internet, is everybody just assumes that they know everything about everything, and you see a lot more of it where, because they've read one thing on it, they really assume, and I think that's part of that deep thinking and owning or just staying on that path of trying to gather knowledge and expand your worldview. I think that's a huge piece of it, is making sure that you always that white belt mentality, right? If you want to put it into martial arts, I think that's
that beginner mentality.
You can teach, but you're always a student, right? Where I know this. That's as soon as you're lining up for trouble. Yeah. Might as well hang them up. As soon as the day you think you know everything is the day you should hang them up, because you're done, right? Like that's that.
Yeah. There's a common saying about it for a reason, right? And I find that that's very true, even in the jobs that I've worked, meeting the people that I've met, the older people who have been set in their ways for quite a while. Like I remember working at this one restaurant in Sylvan, and I had a cook who knew everything. Yeah. She knew absolutely everything. I was just fresh out of SATE and still learning and very humbled by my terrible marks in school and getting through and like willingness to learn. Yeah. And I met with her, and she was immediately like, oh, I already know everything. Yeah. You can't teach me everything, or you can't teach me anything. Yeah. Everything you know, I've known for years. And she was that type. And I astounded her at the things that I was able to do just creatively, just not intentionally, right? Look what I managed to do. And she was like, what? no, that can't be. You can't. That can't be right. That can't be right. That was her reaction, and it got to the point where she walked out. She walked out in the middle of a shift when I did something she didn't think I could do. She was so egotistical that she couldn't handle the humiliation and left. She was. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
And people tend to do that with the more they're set in the ways they are.
It's something about getting your worldview shaken when you really put everything into that worldview, which it sounds like she did. Of that her worldview is I know everything, and when something tests that or shifts that, you can do one of two things: you can accept it and move better and move forward with it, or you can just go into that denial and walk away and preserve it.
Yep.
And something I've been reading more and more about. What's it called now? It's the terror management theory, which is this theory that humans evolved, and apologies because I've mentioned this a million times on the podcast with people. It's about humans evolved to process their own mortality, and that was a huge shift. And to be able to work through the world, you had to compartmentalize that fear away, and now it manifests itself in different ways. Your fear of death and your fear of your own mortality manifests itself in other fears. And in all these studies they did, and actually a lot of the studies were done at the U of A, which I didn't realize until I read a couple books on it, but there's all these tests they'll do where they have some way of reminding. They give you a death reminder, right? Either they show you a clip of like a mudslide where people died, or there's a whole bunch of different ways, and then they find your willingness, like how that affects your brain. And a lot of times, what people do is they really revert back to their core sense of their values, right? And if that is I know everything, you really revert back to that. They say if people put a lot of value on their driving skills and they get reminded of death, they'll drive crazy. They'll just to prove it to themselves. If they have if they're very focused on their vanity, they'll check their hair and they'll do all these things. It's so much of what we do as people, we think it's, through all this logic and all these things, but deep underneath the underlying programs, so much of it revolves back to our fear of death and our fear of our own mortality. And it's interesting to see how much people push back against that because and that's why people that their sense of being and their values, and a lot of time it's religion or something else or whatever that proxy for religion is, that is their core, and that's their armor against that fear of mortality. So that's why you see such a violent reaction when somebody attacks something that's personal. And somebody say, someone's Instagram account and their followers is a huge thing. If you were to attack that or to devalue that in some way, it's a very visceral reaction, which really it's Instagram. It doesn't really have anything to do, and why it seems like an overreaction, but in reality, underneath, that's that armor that they put around themselves, right? And they see a reaction is kind of that dehumanization of the other. And whatever your tribe is, you sink into those values and you dehumanize the other, right? And that's so much of what you see with war, which is one of the biggest reminders.
Do you sorry to jump in here. Do you listen to a lot of Peterson?
I do not, because I listened to him on Rogan and he seemed so much of what I'm about and what I'm thinking that it almost felt like it'd be redundant to listen to him, and I might be not infected. That's the wrong way of looking at it. It just seems like in what I have heard of him, I've never disagreed with him, and I just feel like I don't need any more self-fulfilling of my own thoughts in my head. I almost feel like it's something where your core being of what you're trying to do, it's almost like chipping away at a rock, right? And me and Jordan Peterson, in my opinion, maybe this is thinking way too highly of myself, which I often do, but it feels like we're chipping away at the same rock, and we have different, I might be chipping away, I might have a drill, he might have a pickaxe, right? And there's all these different people working at this rock in different ways. But for me to take the time to walk around to the Jordan Peterson's side of the rock to watch how he's chipping away, it's just time that I'm not going to be chipping away at the same rock, right? And I feel like sometimes there's people like that, and right, because like a Joe Rogan, who I really love, but it's not to the same degree. I think we're also very different people and we have different worldviews, and I can see areas where I can see his blind spots and stuff, where a guy like Jordan Peterson is like, oh, that meshes too well. I think it's too much, and that's not to say I listen to him on other things. I just don't seek out his content as much. And when I do, if I stumble across it, I always really love it. And I always really, appreciate what it is. But it's just one of those things. I don't know why I never got into it, but there's him and a couple other people. It's just like, oh, I don't think I need any more of that in my life. And when it is, it's like a special treat. It's like having this one special type of flavor of ice cream that you really love, but you don't have it all the time. It's just every once in a while, it's just a nice piece of it. And so when he goes on a Joe or on one of these other podcasts that I really like, that's when I take it in. But less so
Yeah,
in
fair
direct
enough.
doses.
I'm a huge
Are you
Jordan
a big Jordan
Peterson.
Peterson guy?
I consumed a lot of
Yeah,
his
I think he's
content.
amazing.
It's funny though,
Yeah.
his view on ideology is kind of the same way that you were kind of describing it. Like ideology can kind of serve as a
Oh
proxy
yeah.
for this armor and this core set of values, and
For
yeah,
sure. That's
and he
exactly
was
what it is.
making the argument, or at least has made the argument, that religion has primarily been that source of value for people, like a source for
Yeah.
people's values for
For
thousands
thousands of
years,
years.
right? And that
Mhm.
ideology, well, it can serve as that placeholder for religion. Religion just does a better job of it. But that underlying system that uses
Yeah.
that for a value structure, the underlying value structure, I guess, can be pathologized by whatever it is that you're
Yeah.
hooking it to, right? There's always of course like a dichotomy
Mhm.
where you have to try to balance too much or too little. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
fascinating. He was talking about how people go to war in the 20th century, or at least let me rephrase. He started examining what made people go to war to the brink of destruction in the 20th century.
Mhm.
What drove the Cold War, right? What drove all of these
Yeah.
conflicts? And it seemed to be ideology, right? It was fascism in Nazi
Yeah.
Germany. It was communism in Russia. It was, all of these different ideologies coming together. Capitalism in the States, of course.
Mhm.
Anyways, yeah, that these value systems or these value structures were so important to who people were. They were willing to destroy the
Mhm.
world to protect them. I couldn't
Yeah.
believe it.
And yeah, and that's it, and that's exactly what that terror management
Yeah.
theory is saying is, when you see if everything you've built up, your whole society is built around capitalism, and then you see communism, which is an entire affront to
Mm-hmm.
everything that your ideology represents. That is an affront to your own mortality, right? For when you break it down to it,
Yeah.
it's not like what they're consciously thinking, but the underlying systems, that's exactly what it is. And it's so funny to hear you talk about that with the religion piece, because I think that is religion was that underlying value structure that everybody had for thousands of years. And then in the last 50 years, maybe we've seen the decline of it, which was, new to everybody. There's never been a society that has run where everybody kind of picks their own
Mm-hmm.
set of values, right? And a lot of times if you think, oh, I don't have one, but okay, well
Yeah.
then is it this?
It's always
Is it
something.
that
It's
cashola? Is
something.
that is that your religion? Is it your Instagram likes? Is that your religion? Is it arguments on the internet? Is that your, you'll find that hole will never sit empty. You will always fill it with
Yep.
something, whether you know it or not, right? It's kind of that saying, if you stand for nothing, you'll kneel for anything,
Exactly.
or whatever that saying is. It's exactly that, right? And I think that, a guy like Jordan Peterson, his idea is that religion is the answer. I think I haven't consumed enough to say if that's what it is. Whereas I think that is
Mm-hmm.
a solution, but I also think that, kind of the things that like a Lex Friedman is saying, it was just like logic and coming at things with a place of love and just having compassion for others, which if you look at religion as a whole, if you don't pick one, you look at kind of the current, that is what it is, just have compassion for others, try and see yourself in everybody, God is in everything. We are all God. That's kind of the bigger 1,000-foot view themes that run through religion. I think that's what it is. And I feel like you don't need all the trappings of the traditional religions to get to the value system that religion was filling. You can do it on your own. It just requires work and it requires deep thought. And I think you can get there on your own. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do. Is I'm not, I've talked about this lots on the podcast where I grew up religious as a kid, but it never really rang true to me. You couldn't ask questions. It wasn't one of these things. So I wrote it off for years, and I just thought religion is stupid. Anybody, I would even write off people if you were religious.
It's not just you.
Right?
That's a common thing among my peers as well, and my life as well. Like I know too many people like that, and not enough people who have that element of spirituality in their lives.
Yeah, but then I found people like Joe Rogan, like Jordan Peterson, like Lex Friedman, like the Weinstein brothers. Pete Holmes was a comedian that really opened my eyes to a lot of this. Where now you start to see the value of what religion brings and what place it's held in society for so long, and then you realize, oh shit, I was looking at it completely wrong. Like, oh man, I gotta rejig my thinking, right? And it's very important, but it's something you can't explain to people. You're never going to make somebody have that realization by trying to force somebody to realize that they have to do it on their own. It's kind of one of those Andrew Yang things where you have to lead people to the water. If you try and shove it down their throat, they're going to reject it outright. And but it's a hard thing to do, and you have to do it slowly, which is why I think the rise of these long form podcasts is where you start to see it, where you maybe only get a piece of this every once in a while in a long form conversation with a little piece of it. And then over the years, or over, thousands of hours that you listen to, those little pieces start to add up, and it can kind of build this framework of what that is. And now you have that understanding, and then maybe somebody articulates it really well, and that resonates with you. Right. And I think words are really powerful. And I think ideas oftentimes exist without the words to describe them. And once they're articulated in a way, and once you hear that articulation of the idea, it becomes a lot more real in your understanding, and you can actually take it forward and actually make it actionable.
Like it's one thing to know something intuitively, but it's another thing to be able to articulate it.
Yeah. Experiential knowledge. That was one of the best podcasts I listened to. I can't remember the guest with Lex. It was an AI researcher, and he was talking about how AI struggles so much. They're really good at the verbal learning, right? You can teach it. You can give it the entire internet, put it into a neural web or a neural net, and it will spit out a lot of information. It will learn a lot. But that experiential knowledge of the example they gave was if you imagine hammering a nail into a roof. What is that nail horizontal or vertical?
Are you asking me? I would imagine it'd be at a 45-degree angle.
Right.
I guess it'd be like it'd be vertical. Sure.
If you're hammering it right into the vertical, right? So then how did you come to that decision?
Well, I guess it's a straight object going into a flat surface. I guess you could put it in at an angle, but
so you probably just pictured it in your head, right?
Fair enough. Yeah, I see
you probably figured like, you go up and so because you have experiential knowledge of nails and roofs, you have all these things, and that's what AI really struggles with is that experiential. It can't just build a picture in its head, just pull it up like humans can. That's an amazing gift that we have. Yeah, the abstraction that we can do, and abstraction is a huge part of AI and neural abstraction that the human mind can do that AI they're hoping can get to, but that's that big leap that they can't get to, right? They can do if a task is required, it doesn't require that really abstract knowledge. AI can do amazing things with it, right? Like running a factory, it can do that. But painting new art, like stuff like that of more abstract or writing poetry, those are the type of things. And then those are kind of the two far ends of the spectrum. But then there's all these places in between where AI is actionable and not actionable. And what they're trying to do is to increase that range of what AI can do to bring it more into those other realms that it is more general, right?
Right. Like that's my understanding of it too. Yeah.
Yeah. But just learning that was so cool. I feel like since that podcast, I've had such a better understanding of knowledge itself and how you bring it in, right?
Yeah.
You can learn things, you can read a book, but until you experientially, feel something and really understand it's you almost can't even put to words what that shift is, but it's very clear when you know it, right? If you heard somebody talk about religion until you realize that experiential of like, oh, I see where that fits into the grand scheme of things. And it's all the pieces start to, it just snaps into place, and now I understand it. Now you can articulate it better. Now you can carry it forward in the world. You can start to try to live up to that standard, and it's very impressive. And I think that's what I find so noble about people like the Joe Rogans, the Jordan Petersons of the world. They might not even know that's what they're doing, but I think that is. And I think it's such
100% it is.
And that's what I saw the value, and I saw what that did for me. So now I want to start a podcast, and I want to be able to do that for other people and bring these ideas forward, pull from the Lex Friedmans and the Joe Rogans, and then let it go through this fucking wild mixer of going on inside my brain, and then articulate it back out to people and let them, get my little tweak on the way I see things, right? Because everybody's different. How information passes through, there's that thumbprint of what it is, what you are as a person. That it gets a tinge of that. Whatever the information that passes through, it also gets a tinge of that Nick von Walkerbarth pizzazz, whatever ingredient that is too, which is cool because you could hear the same information from Joe Rogan, Lex Friedman, the Weinstein brothers, and you're going to get it very different, slightly different from each one of them, right? And that's
you'll get the same view, same thing they're talking about from different perspectives on each side. I see what you mean.
Which is very
important. Kind of paints a bigger picture for you.
And it allows you may not experientially understand what one person says, but maybe the way that Lex says it really speaks to you, and that allows you that experiential knowledge. Or maybe each of them individually would never get you to that point, but hearing all these different viewpoints on it that are just slightly different, that all together allows you to move it forward. And it's so interesting. But I think that's where it's very important to monitor your mental diet of what you're taking in to make sure that you have the deep thinkers bringing that in. Because if you're just, around a bunch of woo girls and woo guys that are just, out at the bar doing nothing and really not thinking on anything but, the next party, you're not going to have a lot of, you're not sharpening your sword against, you're sharpening it against Jello. It's not going to get you very far in the grand scheme of things.
No, Tyrion kind of made it quite explicit in Game of Thrones. But, my mind uses books like your sword uses whetstones, right?
Yes.
Like you have to have the books, you have to have the ideas, the thinking. You have to have that, because that's the weapon that we've got. I mean, I'm not the most physical kind of guy that I've ever met, not by far, right? But I certainly know my way around an argument or two.
Right. Yeah, my mind uses podcasts like your sword uses whetstones. That's 21st century one on it. Yeah, not that I don't read books. I got a stack of books that's about to fall over.
No, I'm there too.
so maybe getting back to books. Kind of the first time I met you was asking about Dostoevsky. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right.
Dostoevsky.
If you had to recommend, I haven't ordered any books yet because I knew I was going to have you on. I wanted to wait to ask you. Well, where would you suggest that I start? I had a million suggestions in that comment thread, and it was great. But where would you suggest I start?
I've only read The Notes from the Underground and Crime and Punishment. Those are the only two that I've actually read.
Yeah.
So as far as those two go, I think both of them are incredible. Like one is kind of an insight into like the dark recesses of the mind when you've taken everything so personally and you've gotten so bitter and resentful, you just want to hurt somebody.
Right.
Like it captures that very well, which is really crazy to kind of fall down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But then Crime and Punishment is something else. It is something, I don't know. I was shook after reading it.
Yeah. Oh, I love those books.
Oh man. Yeah, so Dostoevsky kind of paints like the ideal setup for a murder. Right. Of like gives the character every reason as to why he should kill this person. Then he does it, and the rest of the story is all about what happens to him throughout it. Like it's a perfectly rationalized situation as to why you would want to do it, and then it kind of paints a psychological breakdown of what happens to the mind after committing an act like that. Yeah. It's like, whoa.
Oh, that's so cool. But, I feel like sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No, I would also recommend the Brothers Karamazov just off of recommended word of mouth of just people I've talked to. It's an amazing one where he kind of paints atheism, religion, and like steel man's both arguments and really pits them against each other. Yeah. I haven't gotten through it yet, so I can't tell you how it ends, but it was really good.
Okay, well, I'll probably have to order all three and get
the first, like 20 pages, 30 pages or so of the Brothers Karamazov was really good.
Yeah, and that's something like that's the other thing I've done is as you find these people that you really look up to and like the Joe Rogans, the Lex Fridmans, now you take in their content and you can kind of, maybe they mentioned Dostoevsky once, whatever, but now a bunch of their guests are mentioning that. All these people that I've just been really blown away with their intellect. All read this guy. Maybe that's a sign, right? Like that was something I heard all these successful people talking about meditation. I'm not the kind of, if you ever met me before, not the meditation guy. No,
I was that guy. I never started meditating till last year. Yeah. And that's when I really got started doing it. And it was a wonderful experience, but I was never that type of person. Yeah. And same thing. It was through these podcasters talking about the benefits that these guys get.
Exactly.
And everyone gets from meditation. And I'm like, maybe there's something to it.
Yeah, I got to try this.
Then I found Sam Harris, so I started following the Waking Up podcast. I went through like the full month of that, and it was eye opening. It was incredible.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool, and that's what's so cool about people like Sam Harris that are taking something so influential like meditation and bring it to the masses in his own way, right? And that's just a net positive that you're bringing to the world, right? If people can argue, if they like or don't like Sam Harris, I mean, I've met lots of people that stand on both sides of that argument, and I've stood on both sides of that argument too. Sometimes I really agree with Sam Harris, and that's part of doing it. But I still I respect his intellect, and even when I do disagree with him, it's like, I see where you got to, and I disagree with it. But you're still being logical. It's not like sometimes you listen to people just throw logic out the window and just act on their own emotional feelings on a subject and try and pass that off as logic, and they're like, oh no, like I'm not going to listen to that. But somebody like Sam Harris, where you may disagree with him, but it'd be tough. You'd have to come with some serious arguments to show him why. And people like that, if you did show him those arguments, he'd probably change his mind, right? And that's what I love about it, is that you would hope, right?
Yeah. You would hope he would. You would hope he would.
reach that level of success and can get to that point, you'd only get there if you do change your mind on some things, right? Some people less than others. And I think that really dictates how fast you can get. I feel like the more you can keep yourself detached from the ego and just willing to learn everything, the faster that learning curve is. Whereas if you like that one girl you worked with where everything's shut down, all you're doing is just making that learning curve almost straight vertical in front of yourself, right? By nothing else than your own mind. And it's not an easy thing to do. It's a lot easier to keep those walls up of I know everything. That's a lot easier way to walk through the world. But what's easy is never what's best for you, right? And it's very hard, so hard to detach from your ego. And these are just ideas. I don't need to put any stock in them. If I find something better, I can let that go. That's hard to do. That's super hard to do. But the benefits of it are immense. So you should always be trying to be that person, even though you're going to fail 90% of the time. But even if
no, if you're lucky, exactly. it's 90.
But the first step of, it's almost cliche to say it, but the first step is acceptance, or the first step is understanding, right? You hear that about a million things, but it's very true. As soon as you understand that, you may fail at it, but at least that's something that's in your mind as a goal and something that you value. Now you can start to move towards it. It might take you 20 years of working on it, but you're going to actually see some forward growth on it.
I'm reading a book right now, The Slight Edge, and it's basically taking that exact, it's like the constant incremental improvement over time, right? That leads to a higher trajectory in life, right? And in it, he touched on something that was really interesting in that book was it's human progress is kind of like or at least individual progress is kind of like a sine wave, right? Where it goes up and down and just oscillates up and down. And what he was saying was that the decisions you make shape your life, of course, right? Everybody knows that. And it's the habits that we have daily that influence that. So your decisions have to be built around your habits and all that fun stuff. Anyways, what he was talking about was that the things that you need to do are easy to do, but the things that you have to do are also easier not to do, right? So they're easier not to do. So doing, even if they're an easy thing that you have to do, it's doing them consistently over and over and over again. And people don't usually start doing that until things are starting to get much worse. So then that compound effect kicks in after they put in like maybe a month of hard work. Maybe things were starting to fall apart. They focused and got their shit together for a month. Then they think they kind of level off and normalize, and then they're kind of coasting on their past efforts. And then things start going negative again. So then they fall down and people kind of live in that flux. And I'm like, I mean, that kind of describes my life.
I think I bet you every person listening can probably, same with myself, you get onto that and then you get lazy. That describes everybody's life. I think that's just one of those things you can stumble upon that are so innate to human nature that it's almost like a law, right?
And like absolutely. But it's so funny because listening to Peterson and reading his book, 12 Rules for Life, it's all about like making those long-term choices and turning yourself into that person who does that kind of stuff. And that's what was fascinating to me. It's not like the easy self-love, like, oh yeah, just feel better, focus on happiness, you'll be all right, right? No. It's like, no, it's going to be hard. There's going to be things that stop you from doing it. You're going to have to push through, right? There's going to be
there's going to be some mornings you don't want to get out of bed.
There's going to be things that hit you in the face that are not fair, right? That you had no control over, and you still have to do
Pandemic.
it, right? And you still have to keep doing it somehow. And you, but a lot of that comes to treating yourself like someone who deserves the successes that come from it. A lot of people dislike who they are as people or what they've done or all of this kind of stuff, right? Like everybody has a reason to hate themselves. Let's say it like that, right?
Yeah,
so sometimes it's easy to feel like you don't deserve the good things from doing the easy things, right?
Yeah.
And then you've got that like self-hatred, that guilt and whatnot, which is kind of like, I mean,
imposter syndrome.
Yeah, that's a thing too. Imposter syndrome. I'm going through that right now.
Yeah, of course. Everybody is. But that's the biggest lesson to all of it is all those things are true and all those things are true for everybody. And that's the understanding you need to work for because now it loses all its power.
Right.
It's scary as fuck to feel like, one of these days everyone's going to wake up and realize I don't know what I'm doing and I'm just flying by the seat of my pants and all this shit. But once you understand that everyone around you is thinking that exact same thing from fucking Elon Musk down to the guy sweeping up at the end of the day, we're all in that same mode. And it's just, that's part of nature. But understanding that at least gives you that you're still going to be at its whims for the most part, but you can start to break free of that cycle a little bit once you do that.
And it's easy to conflate success with like a feeling of superiority too, right? Because I mean, you've done all the work, you're successful, you're the best, blah 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 blah, right? And one thing that I'm kind of reading about now, I was just saying something and I've lost my train of thought. Drats.
I do that all the time.
Drats.
For a guy that runs a podcast, I get midway through a sentence and I don't know where I was going with it, or I think of some other tangent.
That's right. Yeah. So it's like, what's the difference between the most successful and the second most successful? And It's a small margin. It's somebody who did the right things longer. That's all it was.
Yeah.
Right. And I can't remember what it was. I think it was that Slight Edge as well, was like the difference between somebody getting paid millions of dollars for a baseball contract and getting paid the average salary is like a quarter inch up or down on the bat. Like that's the difference. Mm-hmm. They can hit that or a little bit more than the other person.
Or it's that one extra hour that they put in at the rink shoot pucks,
Exactly. Same thing.
At that level, it comes down to that grind of what are you willing to put in. I think one of the best ways you can look at it is in fighting in MMA. A lot of the times when it goes to decision, right? If there's a knockout, this kind of theory goes out the window. But oftentimes with the decision, at the end of a fight, it's whoever wants it more. It's whoever has that internal grind of, it's easy to see it in a long term, but that's one time where you can see it in that instant of, okay, it's the third round, it's tied 1-1. Who wants it more? And you can see that grind of, when you expand it over a career, right? It's those hours in the gym that you put in. It's that extra grind. You can see it in this one moment. Who is willing to go to that deeper place? And it's so much about that. It's inches.
You see it a lot in tennis too. I love watching tennis, and I was a tennis player for a little bit of my life, and I really got into the professional tennis. And watching Andy Roddick, one of the best Americans in the last little while, fastest serve of all the professional players by a long shot. Like, he was crazy good. Yeah. I watched his career go from like he could only go for 3 hours during like an Australian Open. In the first year I started watching him, and over the course of like a year and a half, conditioned himself so well. He was playing in plus 50-degree weather in Melbourne, Australia, and went 5 hours. And you could see how exhausted he was in that heat, and he still pulled through over his opponent. And I was just impressed. I was incredibly impressed seeing how the effort that he was putting in. Like, I watched a few like articles, interview articles where where he was training and stuff, and he was talking about his training regimen, and I was like, damn, this guy's putting in so much work. I was happy to see it pay off, but it goes to show like it's that effort that really does make the difference when it comes down to it, right? And it's not by that much, because that other guy was still keeping up. But he was just doing it.
And I think that's what's so amazing now is, as technology is opening up the windows into people's lives. Of it used to be you would try to look at successful people, but a lot of times successful people weren't really letting you in on their tips and tricks of the trade, right? You didn't really know what Wayne Gretzky was doing differently than I don't know who else, like the average player back then. But nowadays, with podcasting, with YouTube, with all these things, a lot of time people are allowed this window into a world of an elite athlete, or elite, not even athletics, and into anything, right? You can see more in-depth interviews, long form with Elon Musk, where you can get into his mind of a super window of what brings them forward, and you can start to see. And at the end of the day, all the stories are different versions of the same story. It's that extra little bit of grind and wanting it that little bit more. But now you can see that people before, Connor McDavid's now the best player in hockey, but you can see how much extra time he puts in and how much grinding. You talk to everybody, no, he's the hardest worker there. That's what it is. And that's what it all comes down to. Obviously talent has something to do with it, but it's not the number one factor. It's that grind.
No, that's just it. Yeah. And even these, I read success books all the time, because I'm interested in success, right? I've always just been interested in like what makes a Steve Jobs a Steve Jobs, or an Elon Musk an Elon Musk. And that's why I was so happy to find Walter Isaacson, whose like specialty is writing about those hyper successful people, the Benjamin Franklin, Leonardo da Vinci, Steve Jobs, what was the other one? Henry Kissinger, greatest politician. He was talking about how he was able to serve under multiple cabinets of alternating governments. All these different types of things, like hyper successful people. What is it among them that's common?
Yeah, what are the common threads?
Right. And I'm like, well, realistically, if you can figure out those common threads, you should be able to emulate it.
Should pretty good roadmap.
Right. Yeah. So I've dug into those a lot, and a lot of that comes down to they're too busy focused on what they're doing to share all of these things, right? Like why, like Elon Musk, I'm sure he'd do a lot more podcasts if he wasn't so driven by his purpose and his vision, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing about successful people is until they get to their success, they don't want to share what they're doing because one, they're not sure if it's going to work or not, right? And two, it's kind of like a brag when you're kind of showing off about it. I can see how some people might not want to share that. And then the last thing was like, until you hit that success, you wouldn't be taken seriously anyways.
Right. And I think, but I think that's a trap because I think who's proving this wrong. I completely agree with you, but I think it's not innate. I don't think that's one of those things that's human nature. I think that's the prototype that's been set before and people are matching it. But then you see someone like Joe Rogan, who from the very start always put his hand back, always wanted to support people, always wanted people to come out from under him, always was supporting young comics, bringing them on, giving them their shot from the before he was huge, and then just kept it going, right? And then now you see that in all these people that are kind of coming under him, and they're all replicating that same thing. I think it is something where I think you nailed it with that last point you made is nobody's going to take you seriously until you have that success. Like right now, I'm trying to do that with this podcast of bringing people on and sharing trying to put them in the best light to share what makes them special. And people might not take me seriously yet because I haven't showed much success. But then if one day when I do reach that success, they'll look back and be like, oh no, he was doing this from the start. He didn't wait until he had the success until people were going to take me seriously to start doing it. No, you do it right from the start and you be consistent with it because I've seen that now, but I probably wouldn't have been doing that if I didn't have that example of Joe Rogan showing it before of there's a path.
It's a lot easier with a map.
Exactly. And all it takes is one person to fucking blaze a new trail, and they're I can go that way too, right? Which is something I've talked about on lots of the hockey podcasts I've done. Is there was always a prototypical when you look at a hockey interview for the last fucking 50, 100 years, it's the same shit. Yeah, get pucks deep. Yeah, work as a team. Yeah, back both ways. All these shit. You don't hear anything, and that was. And that was the path. Every hockey player, that was what you did. You'd have a couple outliers that would be a little bit wilder in the media, show a little bit more personality, but that was the roadmap. But now you're starting to see with podcasts and stuff, and there's this huge success of like Spit and Chicklets, which is a huge hockey podcast, and it's showing these guys that can go on and show success by letting a little bit more of their personality out. And now you see these young players who some, like Connor McDavid, choose to go that Wayne Gretzky route where they're very, stoic with the media. They say the right things and do all that. But now you have the door open to a guy like, who's that young? I think he was on Chicago. Some young player on Chicago comes on and just full out like shows his personality, cracking jokes, swearing, being crazy and stuff. And that's the path. But before you would see no hockey players doing it because that wasn't a new path. Now that trail has been blazed, you see all these young kids coming up and they can now choose that. I can go the Wayne Gretzky route or I can go the Ryan Reeves route and kind of show different things. But until that happens, you never see it. And I think that's what's so special is looking for those people that aren't just, happy, satisfied with the path. They want to bust that new one. They want to blaze that trail.
Absolutely. But for every trailblazer that makes it, there's a ton that don't. And that's like, right. There's always a risk to being a trailblazer, right?
Sure. Yeah. Well, that's the thing that people saying to me, like, why are you doing 3-hour podcasts? You'll never grow because, people aren't willing to listen to that. And it's like, well, okay, I don't care. Somebody is.
I'm not doing it for them.
Do it for me. I do want to do what I enjoy and what I think is successful and what I see value in. And eventually people will catch on to that and people will see the value that I see. Right. And that's
exactly it.
That's a bet I have to take. That's a bet I have to make on myself. And it'd be very easy to change that, once I get a little traction, then I'll bump it up I'll just do 1 hour interviews until I get a little bit of traction. Then I'll bump it back up to 3 hours. That's the easy way out. And what do you find every time you go for the fucking easy way? What do you find? Failure or plateaus. That's the easiest way.
That's the thing is plateaus are what you're going to hit. And those plateaus are hard to break through sometimes. I know I did streaming for a while and
cool.
Streaming was like that. I did a lot of hard work up front. I got like a few viewers and whatnot, and then I started taking the easy way. I'll just stream once a week this week. I'll stream once a week this week.
It's all about that consistency, hey?
And then as soon as the schedule changed, everything just kind of cratered. And I'm like, oh man, why did I change it?
Oh, that's funny. That's it's funny you say that because that's something that I'm planning on getting into. I have a PC that I've had half built. Well, it's just sitting in parts in the next room because I can't get a goddamn graphics card. They're all sold out everywhere I go when I don't like tips of the trade. So I've had for now 2 months a full PC minus a graphics card sitting in parts waiting there. But once I have it built, I have a full plan on starting to stream. And a big piece of this podcast is just accountability because now I've set it out here. I have to follow up with it. But that's one of those things where very much like a podcast, streaming is all about that consistency and that grind and making sure that you show up and that the people that depend on you and want you for that content, you're there for them when you say you're going to be, right? And as soon as you let that you get a little bit lazy with it, the whole thing craters, right? And that's what all the people talk about with podcasts. They say, if you want to be successful, just make sure you have one every week. Just never miss a week. Always have one done. And that's a little bit stressful sometimes. Sometimes you have 4 or 5 in the can, and then sometimes you release your last one. You're like, oh shit, I have nothing planned. I need to get an interview, right?
I need to get some done now. Yeah.
Awesome stress. It's very important to keep that value of consistency there in your mind all the time. And that will bring that. If nothing else, you're still going to need a lot more factors and a lot of luck and a lot of things to fall into place. But that consistency, that's the base. That is the base of the pillar. If you don't have that, if that is weak, the whole thing can crumble. You can have as much skill, you can have as much talent, you can have as much consistency in that grind. The whole thing crumbles down, right? And
it's interesting because content creation just in general is like that. I started a Facebook page just to spread electric vehicle news and stuff.
Right.
And I was kind of in the same boat, like researching, trying to figure out how best to do the content and stuff. And it was, for a while, it was, okay, here's the calendar. We're going to do X amount of posts per day. And I kept it up for like 2 or 3 weeks and I got burnt out.
Yeah.
And all of the effort kind of, I seen it for the next week go up and then just drop. Yeah. And I'm like, oh no.
He's maintaining passion through that grind and not burning out and balancing that and looking out for your own mental health to make sure that you're walking that tightrope of not falling to one side or the other, to the lazy or to the burnout. That's the two sides that you can fall onto, and it's not pretty on either side, right? So it's and what is that Facebook page called? If people that are interested in kind of the first part of the conversation, we got a little bit away from it here, but that's
I guess so. It's Trevor IRL.
Trevor IRL.
It stands,
Okay.
Trevor IRL, integrity, responsibility, and loyalty.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
In real life.
Yeah. It's kind of got a double meaning, so I thought it was quite clever.
That's awesome.
But overall though, like it's difficult creating content. It's not as easy as I thought it would be. I thought it would just be a quick little like click, good. That's like the low effort stuff doesn't cut it.
No, definitely not. What were you streaming when you were streaming?
League of Legends and Path of Exile.
Oh, League of Legends, hey?
Well, I've recently started dabbling again, but for the most part, I kind of shut that off because it was a rage fest all the time.
Well, you just stumbled into the next hour of what our conversation is going to be about, because I'm a little bit of League of Legends connoisseur myself.
There we go.
Yeah, so I was never really in. I shouldn't say that. I love video games. I was always into video games. I don't know where I was about to say that. I fucking love video games. I was into PC games. That was where I was going with it. And I had kind of stopped playing video games in about grade 11 or 12, started drinking, started partying, hockey, that kind of took over, that sort of things. Video games took a backseat. Also, we lived in Slave Lake and the internet was so shit. You couldn't play online. So it was like, what's the point anymore? After you get a taste of, playing a little bit of COD online and that kind of thing, when you can't play it at the highest levels, it's kind of annoying. So I just hadn't played video games in probably 3 years at this point. And then I go into my second year of university, and all these guys on my floor are playing this League of Legends, and I'm making fun of them, calling them nerds, all this. This game's so stupid. I've never played this. How are you guys wasting your life on this? Because they just sit and play hours of this fucking game.
Oh, yeah.
And before every night we go drinking, we'd play drinking league. Well, I wouldn't play; they would play. So, if you get a kill, give 2 drinks. If you get a double kill, give 4. Right? If you die, take a drink. And
oh man,
I would just pick one of them, go on there. Like I'm just side saddling with you. If you give drinks, I give drinks. If you get drinks, I take drinks. Right? One of those. And then after a couple months, I'm like, okay, well, I'll download it and I'll try this stupid game. Whatever. I'll play a couple games. I'm not going to get into it. And holy fuck, did it take over my life?
It's addicting, right?
I would play until fucking 6 a.m. I would, and I got into chewing tobacco again too, because you could stay up. So you have a dip in and play all night, and my god, an absolute mess. But what I appreciate, and I didn't appreciate at the time, and I didn't appreciate till this week almost. I was listening to a podcast with Aubrey Marcus, who's another one of those people that I really look up to and is amazing. He started on it with Joe Rogan, but he's a very I don't even know what he's a very spiritual person and a very deep thinker on a lot of these subjects that we've covered. But he had Matthew McConaughey on this week, who I never realized had the depth that he does. I kind of had him pegged as a dumb actor. As soon as you have like the label, you're in for a world of hurt, because everybody's more than the label that would be most easily applied to them. But he was talking about, or they were talking about his book. And one of the things he really talks about in the book is pushing the limits of who you are when you have the freedom to. And I was thinking back to my career my university time, and how much fun I had and how unhealthy I was. I gained so much weight. I, just drank all the time, didn't study very hard, but I learned so much about myself by pushing to those limits. And now I've kind of brought it back. I exercise. I'm a lot healthier. I balance my life out with more things, but it was so much, I would never know. I would never be so familiar with myself of just giving into my baser needs and eating what I want and playing what I want and just having no control, nobody telling me what to do. I feel like that was a very important 4 years of my life to go through that, right? That's not, it wasn't sustainable, but going forward, I feel like I'd be a much different person if I didn't go through all of that. And I feel like a very intricate set of scenarios that lined it up for me to do that, right? Like I wasn't Matthew McConaughey where I'm super famous at 18 years old or whenever he had his first movie, had all the money in the world and could go to live all these excesses and, live in the Beverly Hills motel and have all the girls and drugs and liquor you want for how many years. That's kind of his way of doing it. Mine was different, but in the similar vein. I never really appreciated what it was until I heard him say that. I was like, oh, I feel like I feel very grateful for that time that I had. And I feel like I need to appreciate what it was. Because a lot of people don't get that. A lot of people are going to go through their entire life and never have the freedom. Because I was a very lucky person. I was, first of all, born in Canada. You're lucky.
Yeah, right. You luck out just being here.
You got the roll of the dice right there. And then I had a loving family. You roll the dice there. I never wanted for anything as a kid, right? All that thing, and then you compile all those to build up to that university experience I had. So many things had to go right, and so much luck that I was almost doing a disservice to what it was by not appreciating it, right? And I felt like that was a big moment for myself to understand that and to realize, like, holy man, I got to really appreciate what that was and take all the learnings I can and think deeply on that time and what I took from that. Of if I am to become super successful and have all the time in the world, what things do I want to bring forward from that time, and what pieces were maybe I need to leave in my university days and not go back to, which like I'll never get back to a point where I eat like I did in university, where I just let it go. It doesn't matter, like not working out. I think no matter how successful I get, I will never go back to that. But I might go back to some of the other things of, being able to take in content whenever I want. Like that was something that I really valued of, I could listen to podcasts or watch videos or read books whenever I wanted because I had that freedom. Nobody's telling me what to do. And that's something I might bring forward. But to take that experience and be able to mine it for the positives and the negatives and bring that forward, which thing that I'd never even thought of before. It's just a reframing of your own life. It didn't change anything. Nothing changed with me. It was just that understanding. Is cool. That's what I love about podcasts. You listen to one podcast and it changes your whole worldview on a
It's your whole view. Things just change for you. You're like, I've never considered that before.
Yeah, exactly.
Holy shit. Apply that to my life. Look at all this shit I have to learn now.
Exactly. I could probably sit there for the next 2 months and just think back on all the things and, with that new mindset shift of how I can apply all these other ones, right? And you're just adding tools to your toolbox, right? And it's by listening to successful people, right? Like I would never have seeked out. Oh, probably not suck out if I had to get.
Probably not suck out.
You have to seek out those people that you look up to and those intellectual thinkers that you value, and that's where you're going to find those. You're not gonna get those kind of learnings from a season of TV unless it's a certain show. But like for the most part, you're not going to get it there. You're not going to get it from.
See, I find that video games play that role very, very, very well.
Like
I've always been an RPG kind of guy. Right. I've always enjoyed like embracing myself, like identifying myself as the hero of the game and then pretending that was my life, and that's what I was doing. And you get really enthralled in the story like that. You almost like you're experiencing the story, right? And of course, there's flaws with every character, but video games at least have the chance to like show you a controlled story, show you how your character evolves over time,
allow you to make some choices.
Yeah, and how some choices impact other choices, and especially when you got up to like Fable. Back for like the Xbox, I think it was, where you could play good and evil. So you could kind of see how your choices in one scenario could play out terribly for you in a host of other scenarios. Right. And you kind of get to like make these different decisions and learn from that as you go. I always enjoyed RPGs.
Yeah. And that's something I definitely see that too. And I think that's something where when I hear people like Joe Rogan, and obviously this is cherry picked because he's a big video gamer himself. He had some serious video game addiction in his past, but every effects of video games and calling them a waste of time. And it was just because they took the one chunk out of it without taking his whole nuanced idea on what it is. But just taking that, I think it's so silly for people because now you take people that actually do hold that worldview of there's no good in video games. It's always a waste of time. It's completely in what mindset you go into. If you go into a video game, trying to learn, like you say, you can frame it in a way where you're now learning. You're taking that experience in and you're comparing it to yourself, and you're learning with it. It's like this. It's almost like a VR experience of something you get to do. You get to step into these other shoes, see a different worldview, and take what you can. If you go into it trying to learn from it, it's going to be different than if you just go into it trying to kill. I think a lot of people use it in the wrong ways where they're trying to kill the pain. They hate their wife, they hate their job.
It's an escape. Exactly. When it becomes an escape, that's when it's unhealthy. Framing. Yeah, for sure. That being said, like I always do whatever I'm interested in, I jump in full force, and that's all I do while I'm interested in it. And video games are the only thing that's been able to hold my attention for any length of time. Yeah. But even then, the video games cycle on a regular basis. But there's like certain elements, like I really got into MMORPGs for a while. And
what is that, sorry?
Massive multiplayer online RPG.
So is that like World of Warcraft?
Yes. Okay. Yes, exactly. So World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy 14 was my drug of choice, but but yeah, in those games, there's elements of reality mixed in with the game, right? Because as soon as you get a group of people doing the same tasks together, certain behaviors emerge. Yeah. Right. So it's really cool how you can see kind of real life modeled in video games like that. I always found, anyways, and because of that, economic trends kind of appeared as well, that you could kind of start reading the market of like, oh, this new update's coming out. Hey, there's these new video game, these new weapons or sets or whatever coming out. Personally, I was a crafter in Final Fantasy 14, so it was, these are coming out. Judging by the forums, just reading the forums, I'm seeing there's a lot of interest in this particular thing. So what are the components for this thing that's going to be dropping in about a week? So then a week before that, you could go and get all of the materials required to craft the new thing. And then as soon as the patch drops, you can craft it and feed the demand that has all this money. So I kind of learned a lot about how markets work. Just playing MMORPGs. And I was like, okay, well, it's just a game. It's just a game, right? I can't take that seriously. I can't take that as a metric of real life. Can I? So when I got some money ahead last year, just after Trudeau was elected, I started, there was a narrative changing around weed legalization, and that this was something that was going to happen. And I've known, just working in restaurants all my life, that there's a lot of people that smoke weed. Oh, for sure. Right. Yeah. I at the time did not. So I didn't have those connections. I didn't talk to those people, and I had no idea what it was all about. But I knew there was a lot of people who did it. And looking at the market, the actual market, I seen there were weed stocks that you could invest in. Right. So from video games, I learned how to pick ones that seemed to be winners. I placed my bets, and I made a fair chunk of change that was able to really help manage the debt load and transition out of cooking into sales. Right. So I was like, holy crap, that's so cool. Video games are certainly not a waste of time, in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly. But it's all about framing, because if you didn't go into it, that if you were after it, and you were chasing your own interests and things like that, which is something that I think is cool in that game, because you were a crafter and because you had interest in markets, that's what drew you to that. But it's not like that's a core aspect of the game, right?
No, not at all.
It's not like they built the game because they wanted people to, look at the markets of what's coming and try and invest in it that way. That's how what you were bringing into the game, how that fit within the parameters of it, and you found that little niche that filled whatever void you were after in that. But then a million different people could play the game a million different ways, and it all depends on what you're trying to take out of it, right? If it's just
for sure.
Yeah, it's very interesting that way.
It is, yeah. And it's funny because RuneScape, which has been around for years and years and years.
I played that when I was young.
That's where I got started doing that kind of thing. When it was just like, hey, gather these resources and sell them. Then I'm like, wait. People are there seems to be a trend towards this particular item. Well, this item is going to require a certain amount of resources. Well, let's go get those resources, make them into the intermediary step, and then sell that to them. And that was incredibly profitable. But that's how I kind of learned how you interact with the market, at least in a video game.
Mm-hmm.
And from my understanding of things now, that's basically how you work in business.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Right?
It's all, markets aren't at their base. Markets aren't that complicated. They can be complicated, but usually the base,
they're complex.
The building blocks that build them up aren't that hard to follow. Once you understand the very basics of it, right? Like you can learn a lot in econ. You take macro and microeconomics in school, and you have a really good basis to understand markets and capitalism at a level that, from taking
the average person,
yeah. Like, because the building blocks are so important, and it gives you such an understanding for these higher level concepts. Even if you don't get all the intricacies of it, you know what they're built upon, right? And that's what, and maybe you didn't get that from school, but you got that from video games. Now you already have that base understanding of economics that help you move forward, right? And you got it from a different thing. You didn't have to sit in class for a semester to get that. You got it from doing something you enjoyed. And I feel like that's something where video games are stumbling upon accidentally, like in that case. But then I think there's going to be times where they're purposefully planning that into their game so that people are able to have real core learnings from video games, right? And I think you see it already in some games, but I mean, it's not right now. It's financially incentivizing to not make that your core. You're not. Again, it's not. It's kind of that.
EVE Online. Have you ever heard of EVE Online?
I've never heard of it. What is that?
So it's like a space game where you start off with like just this basic ship, and you build up like your resources. You build up your ship, and you can start hauling resources. You gather with people, protect your fleets and all this. You build communities around whatever it is, your guild or whatever. But that basically fulfills what we're kind of talking about here, where it's modeling how you would start off in let's say fresh 18-year-old just joining the workforce, right? You start off with an understanding of whatever you have. You start off with your understanding. And from there, you're thrown into a world where you have to try to figure everything else out, all for yourself. University helps cut that learning curve, which is always nice, at least for theory, maybe not for actually.
In actuality, I just think they really missed the mark on actually preparing you for the real world. And I think that's something that universities are kind of slipping away from, where in a perfect world, that's what they would be. They would be preparing you for the real world, but they're nerfing so much of this that they're actually kind of setting you up for failure by not showing you how it works. They hold your hand through everything to make it so that it's just like being at home with your parents, and then you step out in the real world and you get kicked in the teeth once. You're like, what the fuck? They didn't tell me this was happening. You know what I mean? And it's like, real world sucks. There's pandemics. There's fucking market crashes. There's shit that's going to come up and kick you in the dick from behind. You don't even see it coming. But you have to be ready. And I wish university incorporated just a little bit more of that.
And back to EVE Online for a sec here, is that EVE Online basically punishes you for losing. Like if you do make a mistake and you get caught out, your ship dies. All your resources that you invested in that ship, they're gone. There's a functional monetary, like a real world transaction schema built around that game where people pay money for these credits that they build their ships with that can be destroyed and you lose. So you kind of see how like
you got skin in the game.
You have skin in the game. You can sell your ship if you build it up and you don't want it anymore. You can sell it or parts of it. I think I can't remember. I'm not actually a pro at online. Right. It's just friends that play. But yeah, it's all about like real world integration with a video game, which is fascinating to me. Right? Because they call it a spreadsheet game because a lot of the upgrades are in real world time. You can start an upgrade for this ship, but it's going to take a week to finish. So you can't build anything else while this one thing is going. So you have to plan your stuff out, try to optimize for that. So it's really cool, all the different decisions you make and how it kind of models real life. Right?
That sounds like a dangerous game for me because I've sunk so many hours into idle games like Cookie Clicker and
I love those games.
And for people that don't know what that is, it's just a game where there's absolutely no goal. It's just like progression of you, but there's different efficiencies you can get, right? Like you're just Cookie Clicker, for example. Like there's different things that you start off by clicking this big cookie, and that's how you get cookies. And then you buy a grandma, and that makes like a half a cookie per second, right? And then you can buy more of them. So now you have 1 cookie per second if you have 2 grandmas. But then there's also factories, and there's all these different things, and they all cost different levels. So you're always doing calculations of what is the most efficiency. And I have a huge weird thing about efficiency. Like I live my whole life.
That's relatable.
And efficiency things are so like, even if my girlfriend takes the wrong path around the island to go take a dip, like it drives me nuts, right? Like just all these little things. But then you find a game like that taps into that efficiency thing. I have
It's like crack.
It's like crack.
You you can't stop. Yeah, you're just focused on it. I really love ones with like complex constraints as well. So like there's this one where you have to like grow your own weed and sell it.
Right.
Like you grow the weed, you have to take the weed that you grow, put it into the bottling processing part, and then from the bottling processing part you sell it to the customer. Each one of those is 3 separate like parts of the game that you have to upgrade and manage. If you upgrade, maybe you're producing the maximum amount of weed, but you can't bottle it fast enough to sell, so it's just stockpiling. So you have to try to figure out how to smooth this pipeline out. It's basically pipeline management, which is really cool.
Right. Exactly. And you take something like I think the first one I ever stumbled upon was venture capitalists. I still remember who was it? I think I remember. I don't want to say it on the podcast just in case he doesn't want to, but I remember exactly who it was. In one of our classes in business, we're sitting in the lecture, and I look over and he's clicking at this game. I'm like, what is that? And it's this game called Venture. It's stupid, right? And obviously, knee jerk reaction with something like an idle game is you don't want to explain it to anybody because it's so. If somebody doesn't,
it's so dumb.
Like you're just there's no point to it. You're just you just watch the number go up.
You're just wasting your time. Yeah.
So he was kind of hesitant to show me that. Okay, so I pulled it up on my computer, and oh boy, did that send me down a rabbit hole. Just playing the game because all the efficiencies, all that stuff, and you think about it of just that's a waste of time. But I think in learning how to do those calculations in your head of what's going to be more profitable than the other thing, I feel like that was hugely monumental for your understanding of the core tenets of what business is, because at the end of the day, that's economics. You're learning the economics of it and how to parse all that stuff out. I feel like, for all the hours I dove into those things and somebody could look at it as a waste of time, if you reframe it as, oh no, there's it's probably be really hard to parse out the actionable learnings that I got out of it. I'm sure there's some there, I feel like you can't do that for that many hours and put that much effort into trying to maximize things, because like you say, there's things that would take, and some games like that have time scales on it. So you have to think, I could buy this, but it's going to take 3 hours, but I could buy 3 of these and they only take 20 minutes, and that's going to make more money over the hour as long as you stay on it. But then you find yourself waking up in the middle of the night because you calculate, if I get up at 4 a.m. and I'll know I'll reach this break level that will increase my cookies per minute by this much. So I wake up at 4 a.m. to buy that. So then I know if I then sleep until 7 before class, I'll have this next level. Like, you can go down a rabbit hole. And
to me, it looks a lot like management, like business management.
For sure.
Right? I've never been educated in anything other than professional cooking. So as far as I know, this is just kind of my realm that I understand. Is using it from a restaurant's point of view. It's like, okay, you get a bunch of a bunch of ingredients, right? Now you have all these ingredients they have a time bar that are ticking down over and over and over again, and you have to try to use all of these ingredients in dishes that are popular, and maintain all of this flow to keep it going nicely, right?
Yeah.
And then you also have to have the customers come in, the customers get greeted, they get seated, they order their food within a certain amount of time so that the kitchen has time between orders to get this order started and the next person's order started. And then, we're running low on prep here. We've got to get a prep cook on it. And it's almost like The Sims, right? Business almost seems like The Sims.
Yeah. No, exactly. And there's all those little phone games too of like Restaurant Magic that do exactly that. And they take that framework.
Oh, there you go. I didn't even know that existed.
Oh yeah, for sure. One of my friends' moms got super into a game, and they're buying all the super cookers and stuff, and to watch it's the same process, cookie clicker and all those type of things, right? It's the same core tenet. But something that just kind of occurred to me is I think something that is going to be very important going forward is changing that. I feel like because of how much is made of, if you think you're going to get something out of a video game, you're going to get something out of it. If you think it's a waste of time and you're going into it, that's what you're going to get out of it. How you frame things and the way you talk about things is super important. And I feel like the taboo and the mindset around video games for so long has been, it's a waste of time. You don't get anything out of it. It's for unsuccessful people. I feel like that has really gated a lot of what we get out of it. And I feel like that's changing, where kids coming up are now seeing it in a different light. And now that I think a huge piece of this is seeing monetary gains, I think you could see as soon as Twitch started and you could see people actually make money on it, that was a big step forward in that. Now there's actually some monetary value to it. Now you see that there's esports was huge. Now that there's a competitive avenue for people to test their skills and become the best in the world at it. Now that's a new avenue. Now there's value added, and all these value adds in the way we're looking at video games are going to change it. So now it's not just affecting the very top of the market, like the esports players. That trickles down into just your everyday gamer, but they're putting more value on it. So now you start to realize that I'm not wasting my time. I am learning things. I am getting something out of it. And I feel like just that realization alone and that reframing of it is going to make it so that you are getting something out. Because if anything's apparent to anybody, is the power of the mind is spectacular. You look at placebo and like nocebo effects, and it's amazing what the power of the mind can do in the power of framing. And I feel like video games is already such a I think some older people don't realize it, but it's such a pillar of society, and it's not getting any smaller.
Any multi-billion-dollar industry can't be discounted as useless, like, or a waste of time. Come on, right? So I don't buy the argument that video games are a waste of time or are useless or not a benefit to society or anything. But yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. Like, it's crazy the value that are in video games, not just as like personal learning, but as the distraction, as a business. Like, I mean, what we're talking about here is essentially taking people who are gamers and turning them into business owners, right? We're basically using the gaming framework to explain how to run a business, and it's a functional understanding. It's not a deep understanding, but it's if you followed that same thought process, maybe you started your own, I don't know, liquor store, maybe you start your own weed store, maybe you start your own restaurant. You have these core functional thinking patterns, I guess, is the best way to think about it. And if you just followed those and just focused on the little things that were required for those processes to keep those going, you would have a functional business, right? You may not be thrilled about the business. It may not be what you want, but at least you can understand that. And if you can understand it in one situation, you can see how you could apply that to another situation. Right. Yeah. To kind of put it into like sales point of view for the dealership that I work for is, you can have all the sales guys bringing in all the business you want, but if you've only got one person in finance, you have this backlog of customers who are waiting to go through, right? So maybe you need another finance person. So then you've got two and you can put through twice the amount, but maybe you don't need two. Then you have to do a cost benefits analysis there. Fair enough. But then let's say you've got enough finance guys and enough sales guys. Well, your service department can't keep up with all the business, or your guy who's in charge
to bring enough
right.
For the
there's realistically, I can see now through the video games that I've played how those processes overlay on real world business, and it makes things cool because you can look at it and be like, hey, well, if that's true, then it's a process. If it's a process, each piece can be isolated and optimized.
Yeah, exactly.
And right, like one thing I share with you is your need for efficiency and to have a reason for everything, and to need to have all of the all of the inputs, I think you called it in one of your podcasts, right? Having more inputs gives you a better output, right? And I'm like, oh, okay, I can kind of see how that works. Like business is kind of the same way. It's been an interesting learning experience coming from just a cook. I was just a cook not even a year ago, to being a car sales guy, to understanding business a little bit more, and I'm quite happy with it.
Yeah, it's a cool process, right? Like,
but video games is at the heart of it. That's the cool thing.
Yeah, and I think that's probably a pleasant surprise as you made that change and you realize, man, I just intuitively know. You might not even realize at that time that where it comes from, and it could come from video games, and it's probably a big amalgamation of video games and books that you read and TV shows that you watched and just people in your life that you saw that had businesses. It's definitely a big part of that. But if video games are a big part of your life, all of those skills that you possess, probably a big piece of that comes from video games, right? And it's nice to be pleasantly surprised sometimes when you already have a base that you didn't even know you had, right? Of understanding, and sometimes you don't even realize where it came from. And I think there's a lot of benefit to doing that work, to sitting and trying to realize where these things came from, because I think then you can realize better how you learn. And right, because with me in school, if I didn't like a class, I got bad marks. I didn't really take it with me. I would learn enough to pass the tests and get forward, right? Get a C and get it off the list. But the classes that I really enjoyed or had a good prof, I would get great marks. I would really, and then I'd bring it forward, and it was something that really brought. So I learned that, for me to learn better, I have to be, if I don't engage, I'm pretty much useless. I'm just going to do the bare minimum. And then when I found podcasts after I graduated, and now it's up to me to choose the podcast that interests me, and then they bring on guess in something that maybe I don't have interest, but because I'm interested in that host's worldview and how they go through things and how they intake knowledge, and I trust that is that already that buy-in. So, okay, I'm going to give this a shot. So I'm already engaged on all these topics. So now I can take in so much content in an engaged manner, and it's actually, sinking in and further.
It's like a trap, right? Like the content goes in and it's just trapped. Like normally with like other courses and stuff that I've taken, it'll go in and I'll get it, but it's boring. I'm not engaged. I'll forget about it a month from now. Like it was cool to learn, but I'm not going to use this again. And it's just, it disappears. But when you're engaged in it, it's like nothing else matters. All that matters is this like fire hose of information going into my head, and you just retain it all. It's fascinating.
It's awesome. And I feel like that was a huge learning lesson was, okay, now you've learned how you learn. And that is a huge point. And I feel like that's a huge lacking in the education system. And it makes a lot of sense because it's expensive to try and parse out how every single individual kid learns and specialize to that. That's just not, it's just not.
I get that. I agree with that. But I would make the counter question, I guess, would be like, how much is it costing in lost productivity not doing that? Right? Like, that's a lot of money that's being like. I always grew up in like the minimum wage jobs where minimum wage equals minimum work, right? Like you're only going to get out of me the bare minimum if you're only going to pay me the bare minimum, and that was a mentality very common in the restaurant industry, and I'm sure also in retail and every other job that's minimum wage, right? Yeah, so. If your employees are not actually doing the best that they're able to, you're losing out in productivity. They're losing out in productivity and feeling like they actually enjoy their job, right? Because chances are they don't.
And progress, because if you're only putting in minimum effort, you're not butting up against that level that you find progress at. You know, you have to push yourself to the limits in order for growth to appear. And if you're just leaning back, you're not really growing. You're not getting any better. So now you've worked this minimum wage job for 2 years, expecting to now build a skill set so that you can move past that position, but you haven't put any effort in. So you're pretty much sitting at the same set of skills that you came into that job with, right? Because you haven't put any effort for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's not to say that there's not skill involved in cooking. Like there's a lot of skill involved in cooking, and man, to be a good cook is no joke.
Exactly.
Like, you can blow people away by being a good cook.
For sure. And I think also on the other side of that too, is I think there's also a lot of minimum wage workers that do put in a lot of effort. And I think that is not something, I feel like it's more of an exception to the rule. I think for the most part, you do see minimum wage, minimum effort. But, you know, I've seen a lot of people that just have it innately in them that I'm going to work hard at whatever it is, you know, and that's an innate value.
Absolutely.
That's one of those things, like if we take it all the way back to kind of the Jordan Peterson, the people that, you know, if you'll stand for anything, or if you don't stand for anything, you'll kneel for whatever I said. I nailed it the first time.
You don't stand for something, you'll kneel for everything. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the one. That's the ticket, right? You see those people, but if you have that hard work as a value, as a core, it doesn't matter what you're doing, you're going to do it well. And I feel like that was something watching my dad, he always had that, right? And that was something that I don't have nearly as much of it as him. And I feel like I have it in times. If I care about something, then I have that, right? But if I don't care about it, it's really hard for me. I can still do it, but it takes a lot more of me, and I feel way more tired at the end of the day. If I have to really force myself to care about it, to bring out that level that is needed for the job, I feel exhausted. I feel drained. I feel that. But then you come on something like the podcast where I'm putting forth everything, but I care about it so much and I enjoy it so much that
it's not even work.
Yeah, I feel
you're energized from it. You're not tired from it. Yeah,
it's hard to go to sleep after. You know, you're bouncing around the house like an idiot because you're so energized by it. But it's about finding that in yourself. And now I've made that realization, and now I can start to plan my life to move towards that. Right? It's not like something you can just I learned this, now I'm going to just be podcaster full time because that's what I enjoy. No, that's not how the world works. You have to build up to it, and you have to do the right steps. But as long as you're still moving forward along that projected path of where you want to be, you're doing the work, right? And that's all.
Yeah, and see, what's really interesting about that is it's kind of like your passion, right? You find your passion energizes you and makes you want to keep doing it and all that fun stuff. Whatchamacallit? Now, what was I going to say? I was making a point about the passion. It energizes you. Oh yes. So recently I found mine, which is data, right? I love data and programming. And I've been kind of on and off programming for the last few years, where I like go hard on it. And my mentality is when I do something I like, I only do that. Yeah. There's so much to learn in programming that I just burn myself out and I stop for like 3 months or 6 months or a year. Yeah. And it's been that cycle for the last little while, but I finally hit the groove now where I'm like, hey, look, I can actually program. I can grab a data set. I can throw it into my Python environment and play around with it and have some fun. And I never thought that was possible, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Every time I listen every time I listen to Lex's podcast and listen to them talk about programming and all the different languages and Python and C++,
oh, it's exhausting.
I feel like I can't even, it's like trying to drink through a fire hose of just all this information.
Exactly.
I have no idea what you guys are talking about, but it's so interesting to me. It's funny that I can be so interested in something I have absolutely zero working on. I shouldn't say that. I've listened to a lot of podcasts on it, so I do have at least I'm probably underselling myself, but in terms of actual like real world experiential knowledge with programming, I have little to zero knowledge of it. But in terms of how energized it gets me to listen to it and to hear them, I feel like I love passion. And even if it's not mine, I can tap into other people. If you're passionate about it, I'm all for it, right? Like electric vehicles aren't my passion by any means. I'm interested in them, but the fact that you're passionate about it, I'm super jazzed on that, right? Like as long as somebody's passionate about something, I'm all for it. I want to learn, and then I can tap into other people's passion. And that's what's so exciting about this podcast is I'll never have an end. As long as people are passionate about things, I'll never run out of content for this podcast, because as long as I can find people that are passionate about something or other, and everybody's passionate about something, I think it's a lot hard for people to capitalize on that passion. And I think a lot of times it's hard for people to be honest with themselves about where their passion lies sometimes, because I think sometimes it's scary for people to realize, if you figure out that programming is your passion and that's what you want to do, but you've already invested, maybe 8 years in university and you're 10 years down a career path, that scares the fuck out of you, where you are,
of course,
just to protect your own sanity, you're just going to pretend that's not your passion and just do everything you can to put up whatever stories you can so that you don't realize that, because that's scary. That was me when I realized that this podcasting shit is what I want to do. Okay, that's scary because I'm already on a path. I'm sounds silly to say, but I'm fairly successful at the path that I went on to. And in society's eyes, this is where the money's at. This is where the accolades are at. You should go down this path, where I'm going, yeah, but I think I want to be over there. You know what I mean? But that was scary. And I think for a long time, I wouldn't admit to myself that I wanted to do this, because exactly that. As soon as I admitted to myself I wanted to do this, now every day I'm not stepping forward to just, even if it's only 2 inches over towards that path and off of this one, at least I'm moving towards it. But now once I realize that, every day that I don't do something to move that direction, you're failing yourself. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Before you realize it, there's no cost to it, because you have all these narratives built up to protect yourself from that fact.
No, for sure. And that was actually one of the things when I first started talking about transitioning out of cooking, was like, oh, well, you spent money, you went to university, or you went to SAIT, I guess, sorry. Went to SAIT, and you spent 3 years of your life, you went through this program, you've built up all these skills, and you want to walk away from that? And I'm like, yeah, kind of. Right.
What is so nice in our position, and for both of us, is in both cooking and business, those are life skills that are so applicable, right?
Oh, for sure.
It's never going to be a disservice to you to know how to fucking bust out a wicked ass meal, right?
Right.
That is just such a skill that you will carry forward. And so is business, right? Like that's what I'm thinking of. I got a business degree and all that. That's not to waste. I'm going to use that in everything I do, right? That's podcasting is going to go towards streaming and all those kinds of things. That's something, and not only just that business acumen, but also how to have employees, how to hire and fire. That is something you're going to take with you. It's nothing is a failure as long as you frame it the right way. It's things you're going to take forward for you. But I think that if you can try to keep that framing front and center and lean it away from kind of the fear of all the other things, because it's 2 sides to a coin, right?
Exactly.
All things and all the positives of it, but which side you lean on and which side you decide to lean towards and frame the world in is how it's going to go, right? Whether you say you can or say you can't, you're going to be right either way.
Yeah, you're going to be right. Yeah, that's right. Oh, I can't remember who quoted that, but I read that quite often. Quite often.
Every time I don't know what a quote is, I just say Michael Scott after it.
It's just Michael Scott.
You can't go wrong with that. People will get it.
Yeah, for sure. Wayne Gretzky, Michael Scott. That's right. That's too funny.
So, you seem to share a lot of the same interest in podcasters as me. Who's your favorite podcast to listen to? Is there any ones that you like that we haven't covered yet? I know we kind of talked to Jordan Peterson, the Lexes, the Joes, the Weinstein brothers. Yeah. Anybody else that we haven't talked about?
I'm not so sure. I listened to I'm gonna have to look his name up now. Give him a shout out, because I started listening to his job. How to get an analytics job podcast.
Oh wow!
Is the name of it? Yeah.
Very
John. Yeah, very.
Yeah, but hey, if that's what you're interested in, that's what's so cool with podcasts. You can be broad, or you can be super niche, and you're gonna find that as long as you put in the grind and you work towards it, you're gonna find your audience either way. Right? If you look general, you'll find an audience that really speaks to who you are, and you find your type of people that share your sense of humor and your sense of wonder and your passions. And then if you want to bypass that, you can just find your specific passion of what that is, and then make a podcast about that, and you'll bring those people in, right? It's kind of two different ways to end up at the same goal, right? You're still just trying to find people that are sharing in your passions. I just am lucky enough that my passion is podcasting in general. So whatever we're talking about, I just love the format and the medium and the conversation. That's what's so cool for me, is it doesn't matter what it is, because I'm going to be happy talking about anything. I'm just
talking about anything. Honestly, one of the biggest problems I have is finding people to talk to about these things, because nobody I know listens to a 3-hour long podcast. Nobody watches like a 12-hour lecture series and then wants to discuss something about it, right? Exactly. Like nobody I know does that. It's so odd.
and that's exactly how I felt. And I feel like I was getting very depressed about that, and just like, I have these life change. I listened to this 3-hour podcast. I feel like my life has changed. I have nobody to talk about it with. And I just, kind of beat myself up, feeling sorry for myself and all this. And then I realized one day I can build that. If I start a podcast and just be very honest about what I find and all those things, it might take a really long time. It might take 20 years, but eventually those people will gravitate to you, and they will find your podcast, and then you will build that for yourself, right? You see these people that like Lex Friedman, where he just says like, I have the most amazing, like I would take 1,000 fans that are, diehard and really get what I'm about and really can connect on that level, versus 1 million fans that are just, they kind of like what you do, but they're not really fully invested. I feel like that's
they're not following you. They're like, oh, this guy, and sure, I'll subscribe, but I'll never engage with the content. I'll never, be a part of anything. I'll just watch it maybe offhand.
Yeah,
and versus like the diehards.
Yeah, and because of the vulnerability that you show in those that how much you let people in, that allows for you to seek out more individual. Like a lot of times, if you get famous for being an actor, say. Putting something on, so you might bring people. Your fans might not be. You might not be a fan of your fans, and I feel like that's a trap that a lot of people get into. They lean into whatever it is that gains them money. They go after what's going to make the most money, and then that's just the fans that come with that. But when that is your goal, you end up not being a fan of who your fans are, and that is the complete opposite. Where it doesn't matter how many fans you have, but I want to be a fan of my fans. If you listen to this and it's not for you, that's fine. There's a lot of podcasts that's going to be for you. I don't want. I want people to listen to it and go, this isn't for me, and then never listen to it again. Well, I'd hope that they give you a try, because I'm going to keep getting better. But I want those people that are listening right now, and I know who those people are, because there's the same people that have, reached out. Certain people, a lot of my friends, they don't get it and they don't listen, and I'm fine with that. It doesn't hurt my feelings at all. If it's not for you, it's not for you. But then there's certain people that either I'm friends with, or people that I'm not even very close with, but they'll message me and say, I really get it, and you can tell that they get it, and that means so much to me that. This podcast doesn't make me a bunch of money. It's not making me famous. It's not any of those things. But that little piece of that connection and people that get these types of things that we're talking about, and they get that, that means so much to me, to be able to just have that connection. And now I don't feel so lonely that I'm in this world saying, oh, woe is me. Nobody understands what I'm about. Put in the work and you will get to that point. And now I'm starting to see the fruits of it in very small pieces, right? I'm not.
Of course, but you got to celebrate your wins too, right? And I mean, every single person who comes to follow you, especially when you're unknown, they're there for you. And you can always take solace in that, like knowing that one person in the world wants to listen to what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Two people, 3 people.
And after you go through that with a couple podcasts that start small, that you listen to, you say, oh, they got something here. And you get to watch that journey of them blowing up and finding success. It is so cool. And you are one of those people that were in that. And that's what I feel like right now. I hope to be able to bring that for people that are listening right now. And eventually and you can say, no, I was there when they, only 5 people were listening, right? Like that I was in from the start, and that is so cool. Just today, Andrew Schultz, one of my favorite comedians, just dropped a Netflix special, and I started listening to him when he was right at the peak of being told no by Netflix and all these people for his special, and he decided to go rogue and just start putting his shit out on YouTube and blazing his own trail, and was he was very successful at that time and was a very established comic. He was on TV shows, but it wasn't to the level he's at now. And then over the last 2-3 years, he has exploded and become one of the most popular comedians. He was on the front page of Netflix. He's the number one highest ranked show on Netflix right now. And to go along that journey and to see it and for him to be vulnerable and honest throughout the entire process and open with his fans, especially on their Patreon, where it's behind a paywall, but to see what he did there, and to be along for that ride was just so amazing. And then to think of like, oh man, I get to do that with like the people that value what I'm about. They get to jump on that journey with me and take that on. It's so cool because I've seen it from both. I've seen it from the one side, and now I'm going to try and attempt to do it from the other. But I know what we'll go through if I can make that happen, and I can, run it through to the goal line. I know that that's going to be a really cool feeling that I get to bring to a lot of people, and that really excites me.
Yeah. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So just before we continue, John David Arianson, I think is how it's pronounced. Yeah, he's the host of How to Get an Analytics Job podcast. That's the one that I wanted to give a shout out to.
I mean, that's a strong ass name. I'm just going to say that.
I know, right?
and that's coming from Nicholas Alexander von Walkerbuth. I know a thing or two about a strong name. If I do say so myself.
It's actually quite funny, yeah.
Yeah.
What's the origin of that, by the way? I'm kind of curious. Do you know?
Very German. Very German.
Very German? Okay, I figured it was somewhere in Europe.
Yeah. It's one of the most German names I think you can come up with. Yeah, and my dad's name is Ingo von Walkerbarth, and that is just probably the apex of Germanic names that you can get to. I've only seen it 2 other times. One time was at United Cycle in Strathcona, and we saw they had all the little cubbies for the workers, and one said Ingo on it, and we both saw like, hey, I never seen it. And then I was at a tile place here in Grand Prairie, I think last year, maybe the year before, and picked out the tile I wanted, and I was walking out the door, and I heard one of the girls go, Ingo, can you help this? And I just turned around. Hi. And he's got a thick ass German accent, and I'm like just through the first set of sliding doors, and I'm like, no, I gotta go talk. So I turned around, go talk to him. I said, is your name Ingo? He goes, yeah. I said, my dad's name Ingo. He goes, oh, is he from Slave Lake? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, I don't know him, but he's the only other fucking Ingo in Alberta here. So
that's too funny.
And he was the nicest guy and super helpful. It was nice, tried to throw a couple German swear words at him, make sure I could get in trouble. Just all the good words that I know, and yeah.
Oh man,
that stuff. Yeah,
that's
names
too
are
funny.
a powerful thing.
Yeah, no kidding, eh? No kidding. Yeah, so I actually had a question for you. You're in the oil and gas industry, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
And what would you say your company does, or your role in the industry is?
We do bulk fuel and lubricants. So we have card locks. So it's kind of like industrial gas stations, essentially. So like we have big card locks for like where semis come to, and then we also have delivery trucks. So if you had a site where there's a project going and you needed fuel there, if you're doing a construction job, we could rent you a tank, and then we'd actually go out and fill that. Or if it's at a drilling rig, we can go out and fuel that. And then on the lubricant side, it's engine oils, that kind of thing, both in package and bulk. So we it's kind of distribution. Yeah, it's sales. It kind of runs the whole gamut of the business world. There's aspects of pretty much everything in it. It's got the corporate side because we're under the umbrella of Suncor as a marketer for them. So yeah, you kind of get a little piece of everything. It's very very interesting, very fast paced, very high stakes. It's
So what got you into that then?
It's what my dad did. He was an electrician by trade. He was a Red Seal journeyman electrician working in Slave Lake up in the Nipissing Patch. He started an electrical company with a couple guys and kind of built that up. But he was always away from home. We would see him. He would get up at 5 a.m. and go to the patch and work all day, and then bust his ass to make sure he could come back. And then as soon as he got home at 5, 6, 7 o'clock, he'd be with me and my sister playing with us. Just being super dad, working crazy hours, but make sure as soon as he went home, he was with us. But at a certain point, I think that got a little old. He wanted to spend a little bit more time and be more around us. So they wanted to get into the fuel. I think there was a little gas station in Slave Lake that was up for sale. I think it was like a fast gas or something. And he wanted to, again, I could be absolutely butchering the story. I should probably let him tell it. But for some reason, I think they put a big package together to apply, take that on, him and my mom, and they weren't successful at it. And then somebody else that they knew worked at Petro-Canada. They said, actually, the Petro-Canada guy is retiring soon, and you should probably put your hat in the ring for that. And they put it in, and then they started out with just 2 locations. I think it was Slave Lake and maybe Slave Lake and Westlaw, or no, I think it was Slave Lake and Red Earth were the 2 locations that they had, something like that. And slowly over the years they ran those and were successful with it, and then expanded and took over a few more. And now they're the biggest marketer for Suncor in Western Canada, I think. And they have all Northwest Alberta. Yeah, he's a very successful guy. Guy I really look up to. Yeah, I mean, I've talked about it a million times on this podcast. Even people have brought it up to me that I talk about my dad a lot, and I haven't had him on. He's going to be episode 100. That's the plan so far. But yeah,
that's interesting. Yeah,
someone I look up to. So then an opportunity came up for me to kind of join into the business. kind of under his tutelage, and I thought he'd be a little bit more tutoring than he was. He was kind of more of one of these kick in the ass and get out there,
just go do it
yourself. And I mean, that's the best way to learn, I guess. And he probably knew that better than I did. I just he had to sugarcoat it and pretend, no, I'll be there for a long time, and then just kind of go figure it out. And that's he being facetious. He was there every step of the way. He was always a phone call away. And at the start, I called him 3 or 4 times a day. I don't know what to do here. Like, what do I do? And he'd help me through it. And then, as you get more months in, you call him less and less. And then it's, talk once a week and stuff. And now we're not equals, but I'm definitely in those 3 years since then, I've really got my toolbox, not to the same level as his, but by learning,
you've come into your own.
I've come into my own a little bit with it. And now I understand it. Right. And it was, so that's kind of how I got to this point. And then, it was, it was amazing, and it was very fulfilling. But then, as that wore off a little bit, it was a little bit more of just day to day and losing a little bit of its luster. And I think that kind of hit a low point where I realized that I was, wasn't very happy with what I was doing. I was still successful. I was still winning. And, all this path that society tells you of like, oh, I keep making more money. I keep finding more success. I'm getting accolades, but it's not really doing it for me. And I had to really ask myself, like, what is it that you're passionate about? And podcasting was the thing that I said, I was lying to myself for a long time that because I didn't want to make that realization that this is something I really wanted to pursue and really wanted to try. And then once I did, I realized, okay, from that moment on, I told myself, no, I'm doing this. I can't back out of it. I made sure I ordered all the equipment, like the mics and the arms and stuff before I had all the shit ordered before I even told my girlfriend. Like, I hadn't told anybody. And then got everything in. Amazon worked crazy and it all delivered way faster. I thought I'd have a couple weeks of lead time and it all flew a week. And I'm like, shit, now I really have to do it. So bucks. Then I built a spreadsheet and I have all these guest ideas and I'm building all this stuff out and I'm tracking all my costs and do it. And I still hadn't told anybody I was doing this. And this is probably in, a week, 2 weeks time. And then I told a couple people, got a couple guests and recorded some episodes that had it released. I think from the time that I decided that this was something I want to do, or just, I think, just was honest with myself about this was what I want to do, to the time I released the episode, it couldn't have been more than a month. Like it was something that I was like, no, this is something I need to try, because that's the other thing of listening to so many podcasts. You get to pick up a few things. And what I heard from every single person was, I wish I would have started earlier, because all it is about getting more comfortable on it, learning how to do it. But you only do that by starting and trying. And now I'm kind of in my open micer stage when I put it in terms of comedy, right in their journey of just, stage time. That's all you want. So people keep saying, I keep asking people to be on the podcast, and they go like, oh, I'd have nothing to talk about. Like, why do you want me? And I'm like, first of all,
just for experience.
Yeah, but like I obviously wouldn't ask anybody if I didn't fully believe they had something to say. This is something I care about and I want it to be good at. If I ask you, I really mean it and I want you on the podcast and I think you have something to add. But then exactly that, it's stage time. I want as much experience as I can. If I could record 3 podcasts a day every day and release one every day of the week, I would, even if it was maybe not the most savvy move, because you'd oversaturate people with you, and that can be as damaging as having too little content. But I think I'd be so happy doing it and I would enjoy it so much. It'd be so worth it. And I feel like I'd get so much better at it so quickly.
Yeah. Well, the nice thing about it too is that you even if you do flood the content out there, you can see what content people are engaging with, right, and then kind of shape it from there. Right. But until you actually see what people like and don't like, then it's really hard to actually adjust with that. Yeah. Right.
And that's the thing. And I don't really want to adjust with that, because I feel like all the people that I look up to never gave a fuck about what people thought, right? Joe Rogan didn't give a fuck about what he just pursued, what he found interesting.
Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure.
And I feel like I'm trying not to look at the data. I'm trying not to look at the numbers, and I'm trying so hard not to think about it in terms of what's going to make money. I'm just trying to think, what do I find interesting, and just really leaning into that. And it's hard.
That's not quite what I was getting at. I was more so getting at, like, you can find who your loyal followers are, why they're following you. Yeah, maybe you can have on a few of those guests who your audience, maybe you're interested in what they're saying. You've seen that this set of podcasts generated a little more interest than usual, right? For sure. Maybe you can revisit that one and produce more content for your viewers so they get more of what they want as well.
Yeah, you're very right. I think I just took it down a different path than what you were saying, but yeah, you're definitely right on that. And I think that's something that I could be doing more. But I think what I was saying also holds true, and I think I'm missing out on a lot of that piece because it's so hard to keep yourself framed in that I just try not to look at any of it. So I think I should be doing more. I think I should be more in the middle of that balance, but I feel like I'm so worried about going to the other side where you're too focused about what people want and cutting it down to that. I'm so scared of that I just lean all the way to the other side. I don't even want to look at it. I don't want to, look at the metrics. I don't want to, like I got that YouTube channel up, but I have my trusty sidekick Brennan, who has really taken the podcast to the next level. He's been helping me out with a lot of stuff, but he just uploads them. So I don't look, because I know as soon as I log into that and I look at all the metrics of like what time people clicked out of it and like, oh, they watched to the first hour, and I don't even want to know that shit, like, because that's just going to fuck with my head and get me all twirled up. But I know at some point I'm going to have to look at that stuff or hire somebody that's going to look at that stuff and help guide me without letting it influence as much to look at that stuff.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of my plan, is just, at the start, I'm just going to lean as far away from that shit as possible. And then at the time where I do need to start concentrate on growing the reach, I figured kind of the first 50 episodes, just concentrate all on the content. It doesn't matter how many people listen to it. Just make sure that it's very strong, because that's another thing that I heard on all these podcasts, and a lot of it with comedians was, there was a lot of anger with comedians because it seems like the industry is very hard to navigate, and it's very unfair with who gets shots and who gets breaks. And I think a lot of times people will say like, oh, you look at Bill Burr, who had that Philadelphia rant and blew up from there, and that was kind of his big moment. You look at Joe Rogan, who had his fight with Mencia there, and that blew him up. And there's always these moments that something goes viral and it blows them up, and then you see these comics where they have their moment and then nothing happens. Like, what the fuck? I got on the Tonight Show. But it's because you need a back catalog for people to go back to when they find you. Right. You have to have a really strong back catalog of content for them to go back to. So now I release episode 76, and it's a real banger. People really like it and go back to. But now they have 75 podcasts to go back and listen to that are all, I'm very proud of each and every one. It doesn't matter where they jump into. Some are going to be stronger than others, but I really tried to make sure that I concentrated so much on content and not about what people want to see, that it doesn't matter where they come in, it's going to be strong. And that's where, and that's kind of the mindset. I mean, it could be good, could be bad, I don't know, but that's just kind of what I'm trying to do. And I feel like that's what my gut tells me. And I feel like people find success when they just trust what seems right to them and not listen to the outside influences. That's kind of what I'm doing with that.
I don't disagree with that, but just coming at this from a content creation point of view for electric vehicles, right? Not everybody is your ideal customer, right? And not everyone's your ideal prospect. Not everybody cares about electric vehicles. So trying to figure out what that audience is, like what the audience that likes electric vehicles kind of looks like, allows you to kind of get your message. If you feel you've got a message to get out. Right. That's kind of the way that I'm approaching it. Is you have to try to figure out what your target audience is, and then throw your content towards them, or cater or craft your messages around it.
And that's the thing. I have no idea what my target audience is at this point. Like I don't know who those people.
Yeah, right now you're just trying to figure out who your audience is in general, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't know who.
Trying to get eyeballs.
Yeah, like I feel like I have something to say, and I believe that. If I didn't believe that I had something to say and it was worth something to people, I wouldn't do this. But what that is, no idea. Couldn't tell you. I'm looking for. I feel like there's got to be a lot of me's out there that are looking for something that only I can give. I don't know what that is yet, but they're out there. And if I just come on here and be as honest as I can and as vulnerable as I can, eventually they'll find me. Right. And it's going to take time, and that's going to be very frustrating, I'm sure. And I'm going to do this for a long time with not many people listening, but eventually, the right one person that really gets it, and that Nick Von Walkerbart that lives in, Louisiana is going to find this, and then he's going to tell a couple of his buddies that he knows will get it. And it starts like that. And that's
having a unique name helps.
Yeah, no, I was thinking that. And that's the other thing of listening to all these podcasts. You hear Joe Rogan tell everybody, just make your podcast your name. Like don't go anything special. It's got to be your name. That's how you're going to be successful. And I'm just thinking like, shit. I definitely think you're right on that, but I really like the name the VonDubCast, so I'm going to just fly in the face of that and go my own way. And
I think that works. Yeah. And the VonDubCast is pretty cool.
Well, I could do the VonDubCast with Nick Von Walkerbart, but now that's just a full word jumble that's going to be about 10 years long for anybody to write. It's never going to fit anywhere. But
It's really hard to say it in a conversation.
Yeah, exactly. And then people have to learn to spell my name, and I can barely
I'm
spell
sorry,
my
how do you
name.
spell that?
Yeah. That's what every time. That's like my, you always have those little jokes for things that come up all the time. Like every time someone like at the bank is like, "Oh, that's a long name," I say, "Yeah, it took me till grade 12 to learn to spell it," or something like that. Like
Yeah.
that's my running joke. It's probably something I heard my dad say at one point. That's half my jokes are just fucking recycling what Ingo says.
Yeah, just an icebreaker there. I love it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's too funny.
So we kind of got away from electric vehicles a little bit, and I really like where it went. And that's what's fun about podcasts. You just let it let it go where it goes. And that's another funny thing about asking people on, like, what are we going to talk about? Like, it doesn't matter. If we decide to talk about something, it lasts about 10 minutes and we go on to something else, and you just let it, as long as you're not trying to stick on something. But I'm just curious, what do you see on the horizon? Like, what are going to be the big changes that come up? What are going to be we were talking about kind of in the past what the big hurdles was. You mentioned battery technology, but what are some of the things you see in the future? What is on the horizon? What is going to be the game changer? Is it better autonomous driving? Is it just, battery increase the range? What's going to be the next step that really brings it to the next level, that brings it more into the mainstream?
Well, the only two things that are really holding back, well, I guess you could call it three things that are holding back mainstream adoption for electric vehicles, at least in Alberta. And I grabbed a lot of this information from this thesis that I read from Sean Klug. Shout out to Sean and the guys at Go Electric in Calgary.
Sean Klug.
Yeah. So he put together a little thesis about an analysis of electric vehicles and the implications of switching to electric vehicles in Alberta.
Right.
And the two big things were cost and infrastructure, right? And infrastructure is already growing at an exponential rate. Like we're getting more and more added exponentially every year, worldwide, that is. So the infrastructure barrier is slowly starting to come down, and right now the range, I guess, the sizes of the range of the batteries. Anyways, battery range is getting to be good enough nowadays that the range is no longer an issue. Range anxiety is going down. Infrastructure is is growing, and costs are coming down. Costs were the other main barrier. And with the federal incentives that are on right now for electric vehicles, you get $5,000 off of an electric vehicle that has an under $50,000 starting base price.
Wow.
So even if the model you end up buying is over $50,000, if its base model is under $50,000, you still get that $5,000 credit.
I bet you that impacts the market hugely for developers that are making a car. You're going to make sure that fucking base model costs $49.99, $99.99.
Oh yeah.
Like sure you are hitting that mark. Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. I thought so. So anyways, like that's their constraint. So actually, some manufacturers I've heard are selling at a loss just to get a vehicle in the market and capture that market share. They're happy to sell it for a loss. But anyways, side point. So the costs are coming down, and with the incentives happening, that's kind of a good thing for electric vehicles, just to offset that higher upfront cost. Because realistically, the cost of ownership for an electric vehicle is lower or close to or lower the current cost of ownership for a gas-powered vehicle of the same caliber, right? Yeah. So they're very, very similar. The upfront cost is a little bit higher on the electric vehicles. You pay for that cost of ownership more upfront than you do with gas-powered vehicles in terms of like gas spent driving the vehicle, oil changes, maintenance on the vehicle, like spark plugs, all of the fun stuff that have to get replaced on a regular basis, right? Electric vehicles don't have any of that. They've got brakes, wiper blades, and tires. Right?
Pretty much, yeah.
And the brakes, they use regenerative braking, so that's not even engaging the brake at that point. So your brake lifetime goes up as well.
Do you maybe want to, just for people that don't know what regenerative braking is?
It's hard to say, right?
Yeah, I know. It's sent me for a word tumble there. Can you maybe just give a quick breakdown of what that is?
So when you're driving an electric vehicle, you're converting the power that's stored in the battery into electromagnetic force that turns the axles one way. What regenerative braking does is it reverses the direction of that electromagnetic field and recaptures some of that kinetic energy and stores it back in the battery. Yeah. And by doing that, you do reduce the overall stress on your brakes because you're not engaging them. You're just basically reeling in some of that power you've already expended.
Yeah. It's like Yeah, it's like harnessing a Jake brake on a big truck. For anybody that understands that reference, I
I do not.
I feel like I just did the Venn diagram in my head of the people that understand what a Jake brake is on a big tractor trailer, and then the people that understand like regenerative braking.
And there's like a small section of
The
people
amount
that
of people that are
understood
going
you.
to understand what I just said right there is so small. But oh well, I guess that's the point of the blog. I should throw that out there. I'm sure I'll get a message from someone that's like, "Oh, I totally get what you're saying." But it might
I
take
totally understand that. Yeah. So, anyways, yeah, like that's what regenerative braking is.
right. Okay.
As far as like major barriers to adoption, it's just price right now. Like if price comes to an affordable or even par to gas vehicles, it's going to be a no-brainer,
For
right?
sure.
Like as of right now, I think it was like estimated $15,000 in savings over the course of like for example the Kona Electric. So typically the average person spends around $3,000 a year in gas and maintenance for their vehicle, right? Add that up over 5 years, that's around 15 grand you're spending for your vehicle. You're spending only maybe 3,000 for the Kona Electric, right?
Yeah.
So the savings there kind of offset the overall upfront cost. And then if you've got that federal incentive as well of a $5,000 rebate, you can see how that brings it much more affordable.
Yeah.
Than compared to the gas powered ones. But actually, it's funny. Even in this thesis that I was reading was talking about how provincial incentives are going to play a very big role in mass adoption for electric vehicles, and you can kind of see that looking at BC. Yes, they have a different like energy distribution, like where they get the most of their energy or electricity from, but with a similar population, they have a 10 times higher adoption rate for electric vehicles than Alberta does. Right. And one of that is the electric vehicle sentiment in Alberta. Like a lot of people just are against electric vehicles.
It's the sentiment. Yeah.
Yeah. But also I think that comes down to a leadership thing. Like the leaders of the province have to actually incentivize it and give the okay, because really they're following the leader. Right.
And it's a mix of so many things. It's the sentiment, it's the conditions too, because BC is also a lot more suitable for EV vehicles, right, as well. And then leadership, right? And I think that sentiment thing is a huge thing that's holding it back in Alberta, right? That I was going to say that you got infrastructure, you got cost, you got all these things, but I think the sentiment is at least in Alberta is probably going to be the biggest factor that pulls it back. But I think it's interesting when you talk infrastructure, and this is kind of in my world because Suncor is essentially my boss. They, for the biggest oil and gas company in Canada, or one of the biggest oil and gas companies in Canada, they have this new the electric highway that they're putting in infrastructure that are going to be Petro-Canada, Suncor branded EV infrastructure charging stations all the way across Canada. And you see one of the biggest players, and they announced it 2 years ago. So like they're ahead of the game, seeing where the place is going, and not, you see a lot of times companies will just do everything they can to buck that trend and just stick with what it is. Like look at Kodak when digital cameras came. I'm not going to. Kodak probably could have pivoted, got into the digital market and went with it, but they know film's not going anywhere. This is a fad or Blockbuster, right? But but it's cool to see that sentiment can't be that strong, because if one of the biggest players in Canada on that side can see some of the light, at least to invest. I mean, this infrastructure project is probably 0.1% of their overall spend, but just the fact that they're opening the door to it shows that
they're taking it seriously.
Yeah, exactly, and that there's at least a little bit of a change in the winds. Like it's not going to change everything, but it's cool to see that it's at least starting, right?
Absolutely right, and the pressure from the federal government on emissions, specifically in Alberta, it's a lot for Albertans to swallow. But if the goal is to reduce the emissions, electric vehicles at least have a key role in that. They're not the silver bullet that are just going to solve our emissions problems, and anyone who says that they are is completely silly. It will compound on other efforts, though.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
I think I read something like 18% of emissions in Alberta are coming from transport sector. So just transporting stuff, right? So just cutting those even in half with electric vehicles would be huge, right? Of course, there's something to be said about dirty energy and whatnot, like burning the fossil fuels for the energy. That produces the emissions for the electricity.
For sure, yeah.
Are the emissions that are being produced for the electricity enough to offset the emissions compared to gas powered vehicles. That's the argument, right? And that seems to be true. Like there's a pretty big discrepancy in
for sure
how many emissions are produced.
And I feel like that's one of the strongest arguments that people against the electric vehicles movement have. But to me, and I'm a hypocrite because I've used that argument plenty in the past for myself. But if I'm honest with myself, the way I look at it is you can't stand in the way of progress, even though that is something, and that's also another problem we have to solve. But trying to hold back technology that's going to start using more renewable energy sources in the future. That's the way things are going. To try and stand in the way of that is just a silly argument, and that's also a problem we have to solve. But it's not okay. Well, let's wait until we figure out that problem to even start looking at this one. No, everything's moving at a different at new rates, and the technology is going to help solve some of these other problems as we move forward. You just have to keep technological innovation moving forward, and that's the most important piece. To use these other arguments that stand in the way of it, I get what you're saying, but also let's get real. You got to have a little bit of understanding of where things are going to go and get on board a little bit. So.
Well, and a nice thing about electric vehicle adoption too is even if it does produce emissions from the electricity used to power those vehicles are 3 times more efficient with the energy that they use compared to gas powered vehicles. So you're using less energy overall. Like let's say the emissions for burning a liter of gas to go, I don't know, what is it, 50 kilometers, let's call it. To go 50 kilometers, you use maybe a third of a liter in a gas powered vehicle, right? An equivalent fuel. So there's a big difference in terms of just savings on the emissions from burning the actual fossil fuel that you're using. And the nice thing about electric vehicles is they push that pollution to the power plant where it can then be recaptured with carbon capture technology and reduce the overall amount of emissions in general, as well as having a positive impact on air quality for the places that have switched to electric vehicles. There's no longer all of those hydrocarbons and whatnot that are awful, the particulate matter, whatever it is.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So that's a kind of a big deal as well.
Yeah.
So that's especially with asthma being as popular as it is in Alberta, like you definitely say that air quality would have something to do with it.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, well that's almost 3 hours that zipped on by. Hey, I know it feels like we just got started here, but is there anything else that we missed that we'd be remiss if we didn't bring up, or that we need to bring up, or did we?
I'm being where you are in Alberta and in the market and in the oil and gas sector and all of that. How do you see the carbon tax playing out? I'm kind of curious.
I think that I understand what they're trying to do. I think they just don't have enough understanding of all the other externalities that come with it and the price that you pay. I think it punishes people. I think it punishes hardworking people that are just trying to get by, that are in a tough time already. I think it's the wrong time for it. I think it, I see what they're trying to accomplish, but I don't think they've, just like the pandemic where you have to save people's lives and you have to take action, but they don't calculate in the negative externalities of depression and suicide and not putting food on the table, starvation, domestic violence, where you can see that they didn't do a full calculation. I feel that way a lot about carbon taxes. No, I don't think carbon taxes as a whole are bad. I feel like I've had a lot of things to say about how they've been executed. I feel like carbon taxes have a place. I think they need to be done with a lot of forethought and a lot of public discourse and a lot of deep thinking on it. And I don't think that that's taken place. And I think that they're just caving to the whims of social media and social change and trying to get brownie points a lot of the times. And instead of actually doing a strict economic value of how much we value environmental progress versus economic progress. And I feel like they, in terms of trying to move things forward and look like they're on the right side of history, they've moved too quickly on it. And I feel like there's better ways to do it that would accomplish the same things, albeit at a slower rate, unfortunately, but I think would be less damaging overall. That is my political way to tiptoe around my feelings on it.
I'm genuinely interested without the veil on it to know your sentiment on
Well,
it.
I'll tell you after we get off the podcast.
That sounds fair.
And it's not that I don't even want to get into it. I just know that I've already kept you here for 2 hours and 58 minutes, and I got to pee my pants. But I definitely will talk to you, and I'll have you back on maybe once the pandemic cools down a bit, or maybe when we can make it happen, do it in person. We can get into that right off the hop, and I'll tell you exactly what I feel about carbon tax, and because the first carbon tax actually came into effect when I was in university doing a degree, and my major was natural resources and environment. That was exactly what I was in during that time. One of my professors had to take a leave of absence because he was on the board of people that actually came up with the first carbon tax when the NDP was in power. So,
really?
I have a lot of direct connections to it, and then also in the industry I'm in, I got to see a lot of the direct effects and the people who were harmed and the people that, were directly impacted, or maybe they had to close their doors and shutter a business that they'd ran for 20 years. And you can't blame that all on the carbon tax, but it's just another straw on top of a struggling industry that does a lot more good for Canada than people give it credit for, and takes a lot of a shit kick.
For sure.
It takes a lot of a shit kick. And that's where I feel like it's just, there's nobody standing up for the little guys that are just working hard and honestly and aren't, they care about the environment too. These are the people that are actually outside living in the environment. They're not the people in the cities that are, they're the people that are, and that's the type of thing that I feel like there's not an articulate voice to fight for their side. And I have a big thing with bullies, and I feel like it really tugs on that heartstring that I have in there. It feels like it's a lot of, these hardworking people that aren't up to anything bad, at least not on purpose. And then they get
not on purpose,
and get shellacked by these people that are trying to do good. They're very altruistic in their thinking, but a lot of times the most damaging things we've seen in history come from altruistic places, right? And that's a lesson that we've unfortunately had to learn over and over and over.
Yeah, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Yeah,
exactly. I got you. I think that's probably the best way we could leave it right there. Anything else to plug? I know people need to go to the Facebook page. Trevor IRL?
Yeah, Trevor IRL is just a Facebook page I put together where I share some, if something new happens that I've come across on social media and stuff. I'm not super active into it. I'm more focused on analytics right now than I am about electric vehicles, but I do still follow the electric vehicle scene, like just trends overall. And as trends develop, I like to share them with people, just being like, hey, look, this is something cool that's happening.
For sure.
So yeah. There's that. And then on LinkedIn, I'm just available on LinkedIn, Trevor Hoffart on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to engage in private message, on comments, on whatever. I tend to follow Lex Friedman, so I'm sure you guys will see me there.
Yeah, perfect. Awesome. Yeah. And if they need to buy a new EV vehicle, they know where to go, know who to talk to.
Absolutely. Happy to work with it.
Awesome. All right. Okay. Thanks so much. And I'm sure we'll be on again soon.
Absolutely. Right. Have a good one.
All right, thanks, Trevor.
Bye.
All right. Thanks, everybody. That's the 39th episode in the books, almost 40. That's crazy how quickly that snuck up on me here. But it's all thanks to you guys, the people listening. I know I say thank you every week, but it doesn't embody the full feeling that I feel with this podcast, and just the happiness and the actual just pure joy that this podcast gives me to record. And I can't have that without you people that are listening and you people that are supporting and sending me messages and sharing the posts. That means more to me than anybody will ever know. So thank you for that. Going into the future, if you have listened to the whole episode here and you're still into the intro or the outro, you're kind of the real deals. You guys get to hear the real stuff I don't put into the intro sometimes. So I'm still looking for help on this podcast. Anybody that wants to help, now that we have the visual version on YouTube for a couple of the episodes, that really opens the door to start, cutting these into clips and putting up, a couple minute ones for social media, and then longer 10 to 20 minute clips. I know it's tough for people to recommend, hey, listen to this podcast. It's 3 hours, right? So if we can start getting, a 10-minute clip here and a 20-minute clip here, maybe some really good conversation, those will be easier to pass on, and they can start actually growing this podcast at a bit of a quicker rate, and we can start taking some of the next steps with it and really taking it on from there. So that's one area that I could use some help with. Going to be getting into some video editing stuff, some other big ideas in the new here on the YouTube channel with some other content that we have cooking up. Could use some help there. Booking guests, coming on for ideas, people to test listen to the podcast before it goes live, to look for any audio issues or content stuff, maybe looking out for the guest to make sure if anything doesn't sound exactly how we wanted it to come off, those type of things. I'm always looking for help there, and I'm looking for people that, now that there's almost 40 episodes out and it's a little bit more meat on the bone for people to understand what I'm trying to do with the podcast and kind of what the theme is. I know at the start everyone's like, well, what's it about? And it's like, fuck, I don't know. You'll have to listen and kind of see. It's hard to put into words, but I think now that there's, almost 40 episodes out, there's definitely some people that have been reaching out to me and they definitely get it. And those are the type of people I'm looking for. So if you think you really enjoy this podcast and you want to, help out in another way, even if none of the things I mentioned seem like they're up your alley, if you want to help out in any way, there's so many things I want to do with this podcast, and all I'm lacking is just, the manpower to do it. So reach out to me and just let me know if it's something you want to do. We can either do it just for funsies, or if you want to come on in a more of a professional manner. We're always looking to grow the team here, because I have some really big ideas of where I want to take it, but it's going to require, a passionate team of people that believe in kind of the mission and where it needs to go. And I think once we assemble that, we're already, have people coming on every day that are, throwing their little bit of weight behind it. And I think it's just right on the cusp of breaking through the next big level. So thank you guys for that. If any of that interests you, let me know. You can reach out to me. Probably the best place is the Instagram. I keep plugging the stupid email. Nobody's emailed that stupid thing. So probably just reach out to the VonDubCast or my regular Instagram, and that'd be the best place to go. Hope you guys all had a wonderful Christmas. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode and some of the really special ones we got coming out in the next couple weeks. So, and the other thing too, if you know somebody that'd be a good guest, please reach out. I'm always looking for guest ideas, and I've had some of the best episodes we've done have been on recommendations from people, listeners like you. So please reach those out as well. And see you guys for the rest of this year, and have a happy new year if I don't talk to you since then. Bye.